Chapter 91. As the spring breeze blew, Leono led his team across the Hegiandi back to the king's leadership, and appreciated the customs of Hegiandi along the road. Unlike the western border where I had just experienced war, the overall environment of Hegiandi is relatively peaceful, especially in the area south of the Hungchar River. The wheat seedlings here are yellow in the farmlands, and it is already time to harvest. The chickpeas are hanging on the branches. Some manors even raise pigs and sheep. These animals are not visible in the western region because no matter which side is, the army likes to plunder these movable animals without waste of effort to transport them and eat meat. Leono tried some stewed pork elbows from Hegiandi in the inn. The taste was not good. The residents of Hegiandi could not afford spices and condiments such as fire pepper, chili, sugar, and they did not know how to slap pigs. This makes the pork they raise look sexy, but for ordinary people, it is already a rare meat food. You can build up the sugar production and breeding industry when you go back. Leono made a decision in his heart, not only to make the people full, but also to make the people eat well. Only by allowing the people to feel happiness and appreciate the beauty of life can they have more motivation to create the future and the country can prosper. With the dust along the way, Leonor spent 13 days crossing the Hegiandi. After entering Wangling, he went to the main salt-producing land of Yanchang Town. Yanchang Town is very popular today. Thousands of salt workers work day and night. Large and small brine pools have been opened at the entrance of the Hungchar River. The seawater is introduced into it and precipitated into brine, and the brine is poured into the salt field again. The drying yard or iron pot is boiled into salt by exposure to sunlight or firewood, and is eventually transported to designated locations for sale, with daily supply exceeding demand. After visiting Yanchang Town, Leono continued to head south and finally returned to King's Landing on the 7th day. Compared to the time of separation, the large wilderness in the north of Junlin City has now been reclaimed. Even the war did not prevent his land policy from being implemented by Balistan, Dorit, Vincent, and others. The farmers who shared the land actively opened up land and had the right to decide what to plant in their own land. The people of King's Landing are no more than those of the Midsummer Hall. They do not have an urgent food crisis, so they do not choose to harvest more corn and pumpkin, but plant more valuable wheat and chickpeas. Those crops have already grown a little. Just wait for the ears to mature. Okay. Leono stood among the heavy wheat fields. Nothing made him happier than these green wheat seedlings. If some were added, they would be chickpea seedlings with purple flowers that formed into pieces. These are food, the guarantee of life, and the guarantee of the country. Out of joy at the changes in King's Landing City, Leonor did not enter the city immediately, but instead circled around King's Landing City, especially paying attention to the farmland conditions on both sides of the Haishui River. After seeing the pastoral scenery, Leono entered the city from the King's Gate in King's Landing City, crossed the Fisherman's Square along the Linhe River, and finally returned to Hungbeo to reveal his identity and received an extremely enthusiastic response. Dang, 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 the cheering guards rang the big bell in the Red Fort, and the bell rang throughout the King's Landing City, declaring to the people of the city that the king had returned to the Red Fort. Leonor returned to the Red Castle, after a simple washing, took off his armor, put on a black and gold robe, hung a golden ribbon, and had a golden crown in the shape of 7 pointed stars, deer antlers, and trees. Come to King's Hall. Countless twisted blades were twisted together. 200 years later, some kings used their lives to sharpen the sharpness of those blades. Now this throne looks like a high-backed chair made of countless iron bars, lonely stop on the higher level. Leonor looked at the throne and walked up the steps step by step. Finally, he turned around and sat firmly on the throne, and pressed his back against the chair. The Iron Throne's feeling is not good, and it is lonely, but the feeling of being alone and looking down on everything is very good, making people grasp everything in their hearts. Leonor silently felt the domineering feeling of a lonely man. A sudden call came from the guards of the King's Hall, and his ministers in King's Landing had been summoned. In addition to the Prime Minister Mesteriel, the Prime Minister of the new Royal Conference, the Chief Inspector Oberon Martel and the Great Knight Balistan Siermi, there are also the Intelligence Manager of the Old Royal Conference, and his confidants Dorit and Vincent. All the main ministers in King's Landing came to the King's Hall and stood bustling together to receive the King's review. Leonor sat upright on the Iron Throne, looking down at his ministers from a high place, sighing in his heart, it's still difficult to govern the country by himself. My adults! Leono clapped his hands, attracting the eyes of all the ministers. From now on, in addition to the 3 ministers of the new imperial meeting, 9 ministers will be appointed, namely the Minister of Agriculture, Finance, Intelligence, Law, Etiquette, Foreign Affairs, Military Affairs, Guard Commander, and Taxation Minister. Your Majesty, what is the difference between these ministers and the 3 ministers of deliberation? Mesteriel couldn't wait. He originally thought that reducing the personnel of the imperial meeting to make the power more concentrated, but suddenly these personnel were increased and the power was diluted again. Minister of Affairs is only responsible for handling affairs and gives his own opinions in his profession. He is not responsible for decisions on matters. All matters are still decided by the 3 ministers before the king. You decide, and my signature will take effect. Leono's expressionless face reply. Yes. Mess breathed a sigh of relief, and he still had power in his hands. My Majesty, what is the difference between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Taxation, Minister of Military Affairs and the Commander of the Guard, Minister of Law and Minister of Etiquette? Oberlohn stepped forward and bowed his chest and raised his doubts about the 9 ministers in charge of affairs. The Minister of Finance is responsible for the statistics of expenses, the Minister of Taxation is responsible for tax collection and money extraction. The Minister of Military Affairs is responsible for training the army, and the Commander of the Guards is responsible for guarding the city. The Minister of Law formulates detailed legal provisions, and the Minister of Etiquette is responsible for handling national ceremonies and norms of conduct of noble knights. Leonor patiently expressed his plans. Thank you, my king. Oberon bowed and retreated back. My Majesty, what are the Minister of Agriculture and Foreign Affairs responsible for? And who will be the Minister of Service? Polystan stepped forward and asked again. The Minister of Agriculture is responsible for technological breakthroughs and applications in industries such as farmers and blacksmiths, while the Minister of Foreign Affairs is responsible for foreign affairs. As for the candidates for these ministers, except for the Minister of Intelligence, which is served by Varese and the Commander of the Guard, Dorit, all other positions are suspended. I will issue an announcement. If you have a wise man, you can recommend it. I will never be stingy. I, Wang Xianming, I have an excellent nobleman recommending it to you. Polystan was convinced and began to recommend talents for Leonor. Who? Leono was a little surprised. Is there someone talent so soon? Barry Dondarrion, Earl of Black Harbour. Polystan expressed a name. What's the best thing about him? Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. He performed well in the rebellion of the Deer Antlers. It was he who organized personnel to participate in the war in time that he saved the Mud Gate from being captured and opened by the Deer Antlers. Polystan expressed the achievements of the Earl of the Black Port. Excellent talent, can he train the army? Leono's eyes lit up. The leader of the Flagless Brotherhood is indeed powerful and can shine anywhere. This. Polystan hesitated. The Earl of Black Harbour performed well, but he was not very clear about the ability to train the army. Call him, I want to ask in person. Leonor was very excited and decided to have an interview in person. Chapter 92. Barry Dondarrion, a man with golden red hair and a handsome face, was about 20 years old. When he walked into the king's hall with his purple cloak, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. Barry Dondarrion, I've seen your majesty. Barry shook off his purple cloak and saluted Leonor on the iron throne on one knee. Full it off. Barry Dondarrion of Black Harbour, my great knight, Polystan, recommended you to me, saying that you performed well in the rebellion of the Antlers, and I am considering what position to grant you. Tell me, what are your specialties? Leonor directly opened the point and let Barry, who had a purple cloak like a peacock, introduce himself. Your Majesty, as you can see, our Dondrine family ruled the Black Harbour in the frontier for generations, so my people and I have strong bodies. Barry Dondrine stood up without any fright. At the same time, start introducing yourself. Healthy and strong, well-born, well-educated, Barry Dondarrion introduced his situation in a brief manner. Very good. Leonor nodded, not saying anything else, just this courage to remain calm on the spot is a personal talent, then talk about it again. How did you learn about the rebellion of the Luyaomen and how did it organize it? Man-made fight. I was not aware of the rebellion of the Deer Antlers. It was a friend from the north who told me that a large number of people with weapons gathered near the Lanyangmen. Who is it? Leonor was energetic. Has anyone from the north played a role in this matter? His name is Yulun, without a last name, without a territory, without a wife, and people prefer to call him another name, Langzi. Yulun, right. Leonor suddenly realized that it was Barry Dondarrion who could react in time, and it was the Night Watch who reminded him, he is still in King's Landing. It's still here. He said he recruited people for the Night Watcher and brought some news about the Great Wall in the north. I hope to see you, Your Majesty. Barry Dondarrion bowed and conveyed Lanja's request for advice. Don't hurry for this. Leonor knew that it was probably the Night Watch who discovered the White Walker and came to report the news, but there was no hurry for this matter. Barry, you continue to say that after you get the news, how to organize man-made battles. Your Majesty, His Highness Stannis' fleet was in Blackwater Bay at that time. When I heard that a large number of people with weapons gathered in the Mud Gate, I felt that things were not that simple, so I found my friend, Mills Red Saurus, and some people rushed over. The Deer Anton Niles had not launched an attack at that time. We caught one of his companions, and after asking about the situation, we attacked them. Why attack the Deer Antlers instead of assisting them to open the city gate and welcome Stannis into the city? Leonor held up his chin with interest. In the King's Hall, with Leonor's problems, Balistan and others couldn't help but sweat for Barry. Barry himself also showed some distraught expression and knelt down on one knee again, looking at the king on the Iron Throne. Sincerely said, My Majesty, our Dondarrion family ruled Black Harbor for generations and was loyal to the Iron Throne. I didn't think so much at that time. I just felt that the King's Landing under your rule was much better than in the past, and people had new expectations. His Highness Stannis, no matter what his thoughts, his army will definitely kill people when he enters the city, so... Okay. Leonor clapped his palm directly, I am very satisfied with your answer. Dondarrion of Black Harbor and all the nobles of Westeros should learn from you, and only by taking the safety of the people to heart. Only then can you show your nobility. Get up, get up. With Leonor's raising his hand, Barry wiped the sweat from his forehead and barely stood up. Then his heart was replaced by a sense of ecstasy, because Leonor, who was in the upper head, spoke. Young Barry, I really want you to serve as my military minister. Tell me, do you have any experience in training the army? Leonor asked Barry if he was confident of taking office. My Majesty, my loyalty belongs only to you. I will use all my strength to complete your instructions. Barry quickly bowed. Do you have the experience of ruling the established army? Have you studied some military works? Or have you known some military training experience? Leonor was a little unsatisfied, loyalty alone was not enough. My family has lived in the Black Harbor in the frontier for generations, but after I was born, the friction between Dorne, Storm and River Bay has ended. Barry was a little embarrassed. He had no much military experience. It seems you still need to exercise, so let's do it. You can follow Balistan to study in my military camp first, and I will send you to the west to follow Lord Landeo Tally for internship. When the time is right, you will be my first place. The Secretary of Military Affairs. Caino shook his head and rejected Barry's idea of becoming Secretary of Military Affairs. Yes, my Majesty, it is my honor to serve you. Barry was a little disappointed, but he still bowed to thank Leonor. Okay, you go aside first. Leonor nodded, come on, summon Lanja Yulun for me, let's listen to what the Night Watchmen on the Great Wall in the north have discovered. As he said, Barry Dondarrion wrapped his purple cloak and retreated to the side, while the guards went to find Euron, the Lanja, as Leonor told. It seems that the rogue will not come for a while. Let's talk about something else first. In addition to the garrison captain and the intelligence minister, we have 7 ministers of affairs. My prime minister, my chief inspector, and my big knight and everyone else, aren't you recommended talents? Recommend talents, be generous, and recommend good talents to make me happy. Leonor smiled and encouraged Metz and others to recommend talents. My Majesty, I am willing to recommend my housekeeper Karen to you. Mesteriel bulged his stomach and took a step forward. He is my gardener manager and has always had great experience in caring for plants. I believe he served as the Minister of Agriculture, but he is now in the High Court. Yes, call our Master Karen to King's Landing. I will meet him personally. If he can increase our land to produce more food and crops, I will give you no stingy rewards. At the same time, thank you, my Prime Minister. Leonor agreed immediately, and used his words to make Mesteriel stand up and return to his original position with satisfaction. My Majesty, all the talents you need must be professional. I suggest you send a raven to the school city and ask them to send some bachelor's degree to provide you with services. Oberon and Metz stood up, followed it, and suggested to Leono that the talents he wanted were very professional and he had to look for them in the school town. That's it. Leonor's smile was restrained. There were so few talents available in the nobles. It was really a worm. Then, according to our chief inspector, send the crows to the school city and let them send them come here some bachelors. Chapter 93. The 3 ministers of the affairs and 9 ministers of the affairs cannot be in place. There are still many things to do in the affairs of the court. Leonor thought for a while and said to Balistan, who was next head. Teacher, how many people are there in the royal guards now? Your Majesty, I am now left with me, Mandan Moore, Marin Tran, and Preston Greenfield to perform my duties. Balistan said with a little sigh, the previous 7 were the ones who had been in the past. In the Imperial Guard, some hold their responsibilities until death, some swear to live, and some swear to be killed, and now only 4 people are left. Brani of TAS, let her follow you to Hone. Recruiting 14 alternative royal guards, you can choose, the only requirement is loyalty and excellent martial arts. Leonor asked Balistan. Lin Tiwei eventually gave up his command ability and only demanded loyalty and martial arts. Your Majesty, are you going to hold a martial arts competition? Asked Balistan. No, the National Treasury has a tight financial resources and there is not so much money to hold the martial arts competition. And I fully trust you, what you recognize is what I recognize. Leonor expressed his full trust in the Great Knight. Yes. Balistan immediately paused. It seems that it will take some time for my soldiers to find the rogues. My adults, do you have other things to discuss? Leonor arranged the additional tasks of the royal guard, and saw that there were no rogues outside the king's hall. Yuolun's figure, so he saw if there was anything else in the ministers below. My Majesty, not long ago, the Iron Vault sent someone. Dorrit walked out of the crowd and reported to Leonor. It's another headache for financial problems. Come on, let's talk about our financial situation. Leonor rubbed his forehead and had to concentrate on dealing with the matter. After your previous rectification, the wealth of the National Vault has increased, but your war has consumed a lot of money. Report numbers. Leonor waved his hand and asked Dorrit to report accurate numbers. The National Vault lost 8 million golden dragons in the era of His Majesty Robert. Later, after your rectification and the elimination of the borer, Patir, there was an effective brief recovery, and the reserves of 1 million and 3 million golden dragons were restored in the vault. Dorrit reported the numbers. Well, it's very good. This is also your efforts. Come on, let's talk about our spending in the war. Lian Zhou nodded. His official salt business policy was still effective. During the process of conquering the western border, the noble knights in the river and stormland did not require military expenses, but in order to reclaim the land, I paid some expenses to invest in agriculture, such as buying seeds and building agricultural tools, which was used around the corner. About 100,000 golden dragons. Okay, I remember the church collecting debts and paying back about 300,000 golden dragons. Leonor nodded. Yes, Your Majesty, after the war, your soldiers will also need pensions and salary, as well as the expenses for food, grass, and horses in the war, which cost a total of 500,000 golden dragons. Dorrit continued to report the accounts. Wow, I'll do it. I spent 900,000 golden dragons. At present, I have 400,000 golden dragons left in curry, right? Leono pretended to be relaxed. No, there is also the annual salary of the Fief Knight and the various expenses of Red Fort. This money is about 150,000 golden dragon. Dorrit continued to point out the accounts. Ha, 250,000. Leono forced a smile on his face. How much do we owe the Iron Vault? Currently, the National Treasury owes 1.3 million golden dragons in the Iron Treasury, 600,000 golden dragons in the church, and 850,000 golden dragons in the River Bay Land Geoding City. Damn Robert, poke such a big financial hole in me. Leonor felt both hatred and glad, hated that Robert had left him with such a bad stall, and was glad that he had blown up Petier in time. If Petier had not had Petier's property, the National Treasury would have gone bankrupt directly. He had to start a war with his own face. It was hard to say that there would be several lords and nobles responding at that time. If the Lannister family was not destroyed in time, the matter would be even more serious, because among Robert's past creditors, the Lannister family owed the most, reaching a huge amount of 3 million. My Prime Minister, I won't be able to pay back your debt for a while. Leonor joked at Mesteriel below. My Majesty, we can do nothing to hurry up. Mesteriel smiled with a stern face, but did not say much, most afraid that Leonor would ask for money. Not only Mesteriel, but even Oberon Martel was furious and did not speak, for fear that the king would ask for money. Okay. Leonor snorted coldly when he saw the wooden stakes that could not share his worries for you. I am not that rogue Robert. Without you, I can turn the economy around. Since the raven has not come yet and there is nothing else, then the meeting will be over. Leonor waved his hand and decided to leave the meeting. He was too lazy to talk about financial issues with this group of waste, and even after talking about them, they could not come up with any solution. Most of the nobles retreated, leaving only Balistan, Dorrit, and Vincent in the King's Hall to discuss the debt problem with Leonor. Dorrit, let's talk to the people from the Iron Vault and we will pay back part of the debt first. Leonor planned to use the same trick again. The people in the Iron Vault disagree. They gave two plans, either to pay off the interest in one go or to pay a portion of the interest. Dorrit had not asked about the relevant matters, but the messenger of the Iron Vault did not agree. How much interest? Leonor held his breath. 18,000 golden dragons. So, if they come to collect debts every time in the future, I will pay high interest. Leonor's face turned red. The interest alone would have to leave 180,000 golden dragon, and he would have to go one day. Put the usury loans in the Iron Treasury onto the right. Yes, in fact, they have been here several times before, and they collect huge interest every time. Dory, the Iron Treasury is like this, relying on large loans to earn interest, constantly losing the other party. Okay, use interest to send them away. When will they collect interest next time? Leonor decided to hold back for the time being. He is not qualified to challenge the Iron Vault and cannot let them cause trouble for themselves. This time next year. How many years has this year been the conquest? Leonor suddenly remembered something. In Westeros, who was not clear in all 4 seasons, he rarely noticed the passage of time. The conquest has lasted for 300 years. My Majesty, today is exactly the last day of the conquest has lasted for 300 years. Dorrit replied to Leonor's question. The conquest has lasted for 300 years, okay, I understand. Leonor pondered slightly. No matter what, he had taken a big step now and sat firmly on the Iron Throne, whether it was the Iron Vault or the North, or the River Bay Land, the Dorne Land, and the White Walkers outside the Great Wall in the North, and the remnants of Targaryen of Essos, there is always a time to clean up these people. Chapter 94. In the King's Hall, the atmosphere was dull. Dorrit and others saw Leonor in deep thought, and they didn't dare to speak. In the end, Vincent spoke boldly. My Majesty, why don't we try to add 1 plus taxes? Add taxes? Leonor came back to his senses and subconsciously remembered that this financial crisis requires money. Is there any tax available to collect in King's Landing now? As long as you collect, you can always receive money. Thanks to your previous laws, we exempted many farmers from taxes. When the wheat is ripe, it may be the time for us to take it back. Vincent proposed to collect from farmers. Tax? No need. Leonor waved his hand directly. He never shaved the poor man's money. Then tax the prostitutes or merchants in the city. Vincent knew that Leonor was good to farmers for food, so he proposed to increase taxes to other groups. No need. Leonor sneered, that's only a few kids. Vincent turned his head and looked at Dorrit with each other, saying, I don't want this one, I don't want that one, I don't want that, what's going on? Leonor had an idea in his heart to get money from whom he wanted to get money, but because of Balistan's presence, he couldn't discuss it directly with his 2 confidants and pondered for a while. Where is Davos Shiuz, the Onion Knight, and my niece Shireen? The Earl of Pixar sent Sir Sheworth with his son, and His Highness Xylan, who is now in the Virgin Tower. Davos and the others were put in jail. Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. Dorrit, Vincent, and others did not reply. A prisoner who was sent in, had no special status and could only be imprisoned. I get it. Take the Shuttle's family out and send them to the Virgin Tower. I happened to meet them together. Leonor didn't say anything, so he asked someone to take them out quickly. Finally, he suddenly remembered Xylan's grey scales. I was sick, so I asked, how is that old guy Piskel? He's very good. Vincent responded, Paisley is a bachelor's degree and has a special identity. He was just imprisoned and was not executed immediately. Since it's very good, I'll take it to the Virgin Tower to let him cure Xylan's grayscale disease. If it can't be cured, then there's no need for him to live. Leonor gave Paschal the final word. The Nistor family is dead, and it doesn't matter whether the old guy deals with it or not. Your Majesty, I have something to report to you. My brother, what are you hesitating? Leonor saw Vincent's hesitation and couldn't help asking. His Highness, she has returned to King's Landing before you and has been condolences to the army for you. Vincent mentioned one thing carefully. I don't remember that I asked her to comfort the army. She was comforting the army for herself. What else was she doing except comfort the army? Leonor expressed his expressionless face and directly extended his hand to the military power. Tiriel's movements were very bold. She also visited Miss Sansa and Miss Arya. Vincent held his breath slightly, and he felt that Leonor was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Teacher, have you received Tiriel's condolences? Leonor didn't say anything, turned his head and looked at old Balistan and asked with a smile. She sent someone to give 10,000 golden dragons to the harvest hall. Balistan pressed his sword in his hand and replied truthfully that he would not accept gifts, so the gift from the Tyrier family was sent to the Seerme family in the harvest hall. That is where his hometown. What do you think? Leonor smiled. Even Balistan had a share. The Tyrier family was not only bold, but also quite thoughtful. I am the Royal Guard. Balistan's reply was decisive. The Royal Guard swore only loyal to the king, and any order assigned by the king was above everything else. Teacher, if they give it to you next time, you can accept it. If you don't, you can give it to me. I'm in a hurry to use the money. Monyo joked a little. I won't accept it, and they won't give it to me directly. Balistan replied with a straight face. That's a pity. Leonor smiled, and Balistan also curled the corners of his mouth, and the two of them were tacitly aware of it. You have to keep records and see which guys have collected things, write them down, and settle the score back. Leonor decided not to pursue this matter for the time being, and let the Tyrier family jump around first. Then Miss Stark. Vincent hesitated. Wait for a moment, see what the Northland says. Have you sent people to find Ed Stark? Leonor remembered Ed, whose life and death were unknown. I sent a spy to Hedgeondi and followed Lord Ed's traces and found that he finally disappeared near Shitang Town. Vincent reported the news about his spy. Shitang Town, what is their suspicious place? Leonor frowned slightly. No, that town is gone. Before the Lannister family attacked Hedgian, they sent Demon Mountain to lead troops to harass the Hedgian area. The people from Demon Mountain burned the town. I think, Lord Ed's the sword should have been stolen there. Vincent gave the speculation. Then can you find the body? Leonor sighed in his heart. The man still encountered an unexpected accident. No, the Demon Mountain burned the town to white ground, but my spies found that the team of the Free family in the Twin City had been resting there. Vincent said another message. I understand. Now that I have no point in saying this, just pretend that Ed Stark is dead. Leonor sighed. Compared to Robert and Renly, he really wanted to save Ai. This Northern Duke can really help his royal career, but unfortunately it won't go as expected. Yes. Vincent responded. Is there anything else? Leonor asked if there was anything else. My Majesty, are you going to see His Highness Xylan next? Dorrit stepped forward and asked. Of course, she is my niece. Is there any problem with seeing her? Leonor took it for granted. He hadn't seen Chilin a few times yet. He has no descendants yet, so every member of the Baratheon family, all bloodlines, must be treated with preciousness, otherwise there will be no successor to Wang yet. Grayscale disease is a very difficult condition. I ask you to treat it with caution. Dorrit raised a concern. He was afraid that Leonor would be infected with grayscale disease. Is grayscale disease an infectious disease? Why don't I know? Don't worry, that kind of disease can be cured. Leonor laughed, and Dorrit's concern made him feel warm. Yes, Your Majesty. Seeing that Leonor had made up his mind, Dorrit stopped talking. By the way, transfer Donner back from the summer hall. Leonor remembered that he was now firmly on the Iron Throne and could not treat the old brother unfairly. Yes, Your Majesty, I have sent the crow. Vincent said, he had already thought about this for Leonor. It's very good. Then next, you go and do business, Balistan, you and I will meet Chilin, and the Onion Knight's family. Leonor patted his hands and his expression became relaxed. Chapter 95. In the Targaryen family, in order to maintain the purity of bloodline, there has always been a tradition of getting married in close relatives. When the Virgin Tower of Red Fort was first built, it was used to live for unmarried royal women. Later, I believe it firmly in order to break the temptations exerted by his beautiful sisters on him, Beli, the king of the seven gods, imprisoned his 3 sisters here. Later, the royal family gradually accepted the moral concept of the 7 gods, which changed the vulgarity of close relatives and marriage, but the cold palace function of the Virgin Tower was also continued to be used specifically to detain women in the royal family. As Stannis' daughter, Shireen Baratheon was also locked up here due to her bloodline, and a dwarf clown named Cubic Face was with her. The bubbles are poked. The bubbles are poked. The bubbles that the fish vomited were pierced and suddenly turned into big birds and flew up. When Leonor stepped into the old courtyard of the Virgin Tower, he heard a vague singing voice. In the cold courtyard, a dwarf was sitting on the black stone steps. The dwarf had red and green squares on his face, and a tin helmet with antlers hanging on it. He made a jingle sound as he shook his head stupidly. The clown who was shaking his head and singing suddenly saw a man with a ribbon on his shoulder and a crown on his head coming in. Before he could see his face clearly, he turned around and got up, ran into the stone tower house, and shouted "Xi with grievance. Lynn's name. Is this a square face?" Leonor saw the red and green tattooed dwarf clown, and suddenly remembered the cube face mentioned by Arad, the only dwarf clown who survived his parents' shipwreck. Yes. Balistan, who followed, nodded to Leonor. Leonor didn't say anything anymore, stepped into the stone yard, and before he could enter the door, a girl ran out with her blue skirt. The girl has black hair and blue eyes, and has a distinctive Baratheon logo. However, her pair of wind-catching ears are obviously the temperament of the Florent family, but this does not affect her beauty overall. She has fair skin and blue skin. Her eyes were big, but her left chin had a black sore on her neck, which destroyed her inherent beauty. The little girl ran out of the room, and the clown face followed her. When the two saw Leonor and his party, they were stunned at the door, not knowing what to do for a moment. Xylan. Leonor stood at the door, looking at the girl jogging out of the room and nodding to her as a greeting. His Highness Xylan, this is our Majesty, your uncle, Leonor Baratheon I. Balistan stepped forward and explained to Xylan in a low voice. Uncle. Xylan picked up the corner of her skirt and bowed to Leonor, but she did not call her Your Majesty, because according to the formal law, her father Stannis was the heir of the ranks. Let me take a look. Leonor nodded slightly, stepped forward and patted Xylan's little head, then stroked her left cheek with his fingers, taking the opportunity to brush the black sore there, which was very hard, like a stone. Is this grayscale disease? Have Pikkel arrived? Leonor turned to Balistan and asked. On the way he was sending someone to bring him, so were the Seaworth's family. Balistan replied leaning over. Does it hurt? Leonor nodded slightly and turned to Shilin and asked. It doesn't hurt much. Xylan shook her head at a loss. Don't worry, it can be cured. Leonor smiled and comforted Xylan. Is that right? The little girl responded to the strange man in front of her. Since her birth, many people thought she should not live and thought she should die. No one ever said she would cure her. Because I said, Leonor responded naturally. Just because you said? Xylan suddenly asked seriously. Not all, because you are my brother's only daughter. Although I have a little conflict with your father, for you, well, you are the only official bloodline in our 3rd generation of Baratheon. Leonor think about it carefully, Lanley did not leave any descendants before his death, and he had no children yet. Joffrey and the 3 of them were Lannisters' evil seeds. Robert's illegitimate children cannot be counted. Currently, only Shilin is the only 3rd representing children. Is that right? Xylan tilted her head and suddenly burst into laughter. Of course yes, of course, it's just a formal bloodline. If you include your uncle's illegitimate cousins, it's different. Let Gendry come over to meet Xylan another day, and send a crow to Fengzi Castle, called Kalas bring Edrek over here, and put a crow in the east. I remember Robert had illegitimate children there, and asked them to send people to King's Land. Leonor suddenly remembered again, and looked towards Bali behind him. Stan demanded that although Robert's illegitimate children could not be formal heirs, if they were trained, they would be considered as people in bags in the future. Yes. Balistan nodded quickly, saying that he would arrange King Robert's illegitimate children to King's Landing. After talking for a moment, the former Grand Secretary Sir over there had been brought over. The old man still looked trembling, but his expression was much haggard. He was obviously shocked by the war in the Western Front. I didn't expect that the Lannister family would be completely destroyed. The young Tywin Lannister also served as Prime Minister of the Crazy King Aerys II for a time, and used a considerable iron-fisted policy in governing the western frontier and the country. It is precisely because of this that Pyshil, who was the Grand Secretary at the time, was right. He was pleased with surrender and even opened the gate of King's Landing for Lannister's army. However, he did not expect that Lannister's western border would be snatched and left, but this did not prevent him from getting close to the Lannister family. Wen is a powerful candidate for the Iron Throne. Now that Lannister and the entire western border aristocratic system have been eliminated, it is really shocking that Pycelle, who is Lannister's Iron Core, can't eat for several days. Look at Shilin, this is your only chance. Leonor pointed out the only way to survive when facing Pycelle, who dared not look at him. Yes, my majesty. Pyshil breathed a sigh of relief, dared not complain, and immediately went to check for Xylan. Just as Shil was sending Shire to check for Shire, the guards outside brought a group of people. The leader was brown and grey-haired, and his face was full of grey faces. It was Davos Shafers who were escorted here and his 3 children. De Foss, long time no see. Leonor retracted his gaze at Pycelle and Shilin, opened his arms to the Onion Knight who was entering the door, and greeted him enthusiastically, but he didn't expect a figure to run out from his side. Directly crashed into Davos' arms opposite. Master Leono. Davos was quite uncomfortable in the face of the enthusiastic Leono. Just as he was about to bend over, a small figure crashed into his arms, forcing him to open his arms to catch the person. Davos. Shilin hugged Davos and shouted. My Highness. Davos also hugged Xylan, very excited. Leonor felt a little embarrassed and had to put down his arms and go forward and smiled at Davos. It seems that Xylan likes you very much. Chapter 96. Davos smiled awkwardly, apologized to Leonor, and then asked with concern in Xylan in his arms. My Highness, are you doing well during this period? It's okay. Xylan looked up at Leono and finally chose to nod. My sir, I have a request. Please call the people from the school city in the name of the king to discuss the treatment of grayscale disease. Seeing that Xylan was fine, Davos breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Leon. No one made a request. I have asked Pazier to treat Shilin now. If he can't treat it, I will send someone to the bachelor as you said. Leonor pointed to Pazier beside him. My Majesty, medicine and herbs are the areas I am good at. I can definitely treat His Highness Xylan. Please feel free to hand over your highness to me. Pycelle asked without hesitation. This was his only chance to survive. Then what are you waiting for here? Leonor snorted coldly. Davos glanced at the anxious Pycelle and wanted to tell Leonor that Bachelor Kleisen had also diagnosed Shilin, but thinking that the bachelors were good at different disciplines, he lowered his head and said to Shilin. Your Highness, if you have any discomfort, you must talk to me or this Majesty. Okay, I will talk to you and your uncle. After Shilin focused heavily, she consciously let go of Davos's big hand and obediently followed Shield to undergo the inspection. Leonor stood aside with Davos, watching Pycelle check the black sores on her cheek for Shireen. How is it? Leonor stood side by side with Davos, tilted his head slightly, and asked the Onion Knight. Your Majesty, what are you referring to? Davos replied slightly restrainedly. On Dragonstone Island. Leonor reiterated the problem. He changed Davos' fate of being chopped down. After that, Davos has been on Dragonstone Island for the other party in order to repay Stannis' canonization. As a result of Stannis' existence, Davos had no closer to him except to send his second son Arad to his side. His Highness Stannis gave me trust, and I gave back this trust with my greatest ability. I recruited Riza's merchant sailor and mercenary captain Saradu San. Davos answered himself truthfully the process of serving Stannis. What about after that? Leonor asked. Davos was enthroned by Stannis and served him for so many times. He should have fulfilled his responsibilities. What should I do next? This. Davos hesitated. How about it? Leonor simply said, he took a fancy to Davos' ability. Your Majesty, do you want to trust me? Davos pursed his mouth. Or what do I want you to do for me? Leonor rolled his eyes. What can I do for you? Davos hesitated. He was very grateful to Leonor for helping him back then, but after all, he served Stannis over the years. If there was no place to display his talents, he felt that he might as well keep it. Loyalty to Stannis left a good reputation for the newly built Seaworth family. I heard you grew up in a flea nest, right? Leonor did not answer, but asked Davos a question. Arad once told him that the Seaworth family was born in a flea nest in the King's Landing slum. Civilian family. Is there anything wrong with this? Davos showed a puzzled expression. Then you should have a good understanding of flea nests and even the entire King's Landing city. Leonor continued to ask. I remember every street in King's Landing. Davos was very confident. Well, based on your conditions, I want to appoint you as the head of King's Landing. Leonor affirmed Davos' foundation and came up with his own appointment. Mr. Landing City Chief. Davos showed a confused look. What is this? It is equivalent to the acting Lord of King's Landing. He is directly responsible to me and manages the people of King's Landing for me. Leonor explained to Davos that it was not just King's Landing, but also Fengzi Castle, Lannister Port. He plans to send the general manager to the Shenjiu City, Jiaogu City and Shenxia Hall to enfeoff the place, and does not intend to enfeoff the enfeoffment. Your Majesty, there are 500,000 people in King's Landing City. Davos showed a look of surprise. Of course, so this is a difficult task. I don't expect you to complete this matter alone. You are only responsible for the planning and development of the city. You must improve the environment here and feed the belly of the civilians. Only in this way can the country develop peacefully. Leonor remarked on his expectations. Are you really willing to hand over this matter to me? Davos fell into deep thought. Managing 500,000 people was a challenge and an opportunity. If this task could be completed, the Seaworth family would be. Will you be able to take this matter to a higher level, but will Leonor hand over King's Landing to himself? He is a vassal of Stannis. Aren't he afraid that he will direct the rebellion of the Luyaomen again? Of course, I said, you can't complete this matter by yourself, and the city's garrison has nothing to do with you. Leonor saw what Davos thought, and he did not intend to trust the other party completely. The only thing he entrusted to was the city management and planning work. His current overall personnel appointments are carried out in accordance with the centralized model, that is, he concentrates representatives of the major feudal forces in front of his imperial power, and himself restrains them, and then sends close confidants to his territory for management. In order to avoid the local area being large, local power will be further divided, and there will be no one who manages government and military affairs. At the same time, there will be supervisors in various places for supervision. Are you still willing to accept this appointment? Leonor asked Davos what he meant. How is my son Arad under your command? Davos asked about his second son. He is in the western frontier and manages Jiaogu City for me. Things are done well. I will transfer him back and continue to hone and appoint him until he can stand alone and take over your position, or manages the storm for me. Midsummer Hall or the West? Leonor did not hide his thoughts either. When Davos heard Leonor's description of his son, he couldn't help but sigh and knelt on one knee. Your Majesty, as you said, you are willing to believe me, and I am willing to offer your loyalty. Okay. Seeing Davos's action, Leonor showed a satisfied look on his face and reached out to help him up. Davos, believe me, your loyalty will definitely be rewarded with great rewards, just like you did in Fengzi Castle in the past helping hand. Leonor's tone was full of hints. He was optimistic about Davos, who was from the bottom of the class. Such a guy was capable and courageous. If he was able to do things in the future, he would not be stingy with power and wealth. In the name of the seven gods, I will do my best to complete the task you assigned to you. Davos also heard the meaning of Leonor's words and quickly expressed his loyalty. Haha. Leonor laughed. Davos was also a wonderful guy. He looked sobbing back then that he thought he was just a disguise, but it didn't matter. What he needs now is someone with outstanding abilities, regardless of loyalty or no, as long as it can be used by him. Chapter 97. On this side, Leonor and Davos had a good deal of surrender, and on the other side, Syl's examination of Shire was also over. The former Grand Secretary who claimed to have specialties in medicine and herbs saluted Leonor slightly with a slight custody. Opening. My Majesty, I have finished my examination of His Highness Xylan and have a few good ideas for healing. Let me talk about Chelan's situation first. Leonor was unwilling to listen to Paychel's tantrums and asked him to explain Chilin's situation first. Your Highness's grayscale disease has spread here. If you go further, it will infect your mouth and tongue, and then you will be unable to save yourself. Paychel pointed at his chin. How much time will this be? Leonor frowned. This grayscale disease seems to be undesirable. This is probably between 1 year and 3 years, and may not move, because I have read some records that some grayscale patients have stopped spreading under specific circumstances. Paychel gave himself estimation of. If that's the case, why don't you start your treatment yet? What do you need? Leonor scolded Paychel for saying that since time is so tight, why should you delay like this? The treatment method I have estimated cannot be used directly on His Highness Xylan. I ask some people with grayscale disease to treat it, and wait until I find a successful and safe way to use it on His Highness Xylan. Your Majesty, please trust me, it's an insurance approach. Paychel spoke his opinion. Fatalize all his requests. Leonor turned his head and said to Vincent. Yes, Your Majesty. As Vincent bowed and nodded, Leonor also turned his head and said to Pissier, who was bent down. This is your opportunity, don't waste it. My Majesty, I am grateful for your kindness. I will do my best to cure His Highness Xylan. Paychel bent his waist deeper, ensuring that he would cure Xylan's grayscale disease. That's the best. Leonor nodded with satisfaction, but ignored Paychel's humility and turned to Vincent. Satisfied all the requirements of Master Paychel, and also sent the ravens to the school town, asking them to send a few more medical bachelors to assist Master Paychel, and in addition, some of the talents we need, make a list of students to study. City, let the bachelors there send people over, don't bargain. Many of his next work would require the help of the bachelor of the school town, not just the treatment of Xylan. Yes, Your Majesty. Vincent responded again. Sir Shivas, you can't be idle either. You have to come up with a plan as fast as possible. Leonor ordered Paige and Vincent, and then turned his head and spoke to the Onion Knight. Please give me instructions, My Majesty. Davos nodded quickly. My goal is to make everyone in King's Landing have enough food and the city becomes clean and hygienic. Tell me, can you do it, and how do you do it? Leonor asked Davos's advice. This, My Majesty, please let me think about it. Davos pondered a little. This is not a small goal. Then think slowly, write down your thoughts and submit them to me. Leonor asked Davos to submit a written report. Yes. Leonor arranged all the business and private affairs, and finally came to Xylan, patted her little head, looked at her blue eyes and said. Xylan, be obedient and you will be fine. Yet. Can I still see my father? Xylan looked up at her black-haired and blue-eyed uncle and made a request. Yes. Leonor heard Chilan mention Stannis, but he did not refuse. Stannis could instruct Melisandre to kill Lanley, but he could not catch him like him and lock him up. Just die. I want to see my father sooner. Xylan asked. It depends on your father's attitude. I can't do anything, but I will let you see him again. In short, you can cooperate with Paychel and make yourself get better as soon as possible. Leonor comforted Chilan. Okay. Xylan didn't make any requests this time, nodded obediently, and said that she would definitely receive good treatment. Leonor comforted Xylan for a while, and told the guards who were guarding her and sent Shill to take care of Xylan before leaving the Virgin Tower. He happened to meet the guards to report that the Lanja Yulun had already been found. For the representatives of the Night Watch, you must meet them. Leonor returned to the King's Hall where he received the so-called rogues. The Raven is not a nickname among the Night Watchmen, but a title of official. The Night Watchman is called Crow because he is wearing a black robe. The Wave Crow is the recruiting official among the Night Watchmen and is named after his wandering in the Seven Kingdoms. Come to see Leonor's famous rogue work Yulun. His previous deeds are unknown. He is tall, with a slightly hunched back, and his black beard and hair look oily and shiny, making his deep nose and concave face become more gloomy. Your Majesty the King. The gloomy-looking rogue Crow was taken into the King's Hall and directly stroked Leonor's chest. I won't say much about other gossip, just tell me about your news. Leonor waved his hand, eliminating etiquette. It's like that, His Majesty the King. About 2 months ago, one of our patrols searched the snow north of the Great Wall and found some of the bodies of our dead brothers resurrected. Those bodies had blue eyes, and move quickly and quickly. We think the White Walker may have made a comeback. I understand. I believe that the Night Watcher will not lie, but Lanja Yulun, you also know that the situation in the Seven Kingdoms is not good now. What help do you want from me? Leonor did not ask for details. The White Walker's comeback is the highlight of Game of Thrones, and he will not doubt it. The key now is what he can do. We hope to recruit more volunteers to go to the north and guard the Great Wall. The return of the White Walkers will definitely cause the savage tribe to move southward. We are not enough. Lanja Yulun told the Night Watchman's request. Have you brought this news to Winterfell, north? Leono asked. No, the Duke of Stark of Winterfell is missing. His son Robb Stark led his army south, but we couldn't meet. Yulun also wanted to go to Winterfell for help, but unfortunately he didn't meet the main master. I understand. Then when you go to Winterfell this time, when you return to the north, you will also tell Robb Stark about the relevant situation. I remember that every generation of the Stark family will send people to the Night Watch to serve. They will not sit idly by. Leono asked Lanja to go to Winterfell when he returned to the north to convey the news. Then you? Yulun hesitated and asked himself to go to Winterfell. What about the King's Landing? You can go to our cell to take a look. If anyone is willing to be a night watchman in the north, you can take it away directly. Leono slashed the corner of his mouth. It is not a trivial matter to be a volunteer for a night watchman. That is to swear that you will not marry, have children, or have fiefs. No one will be willing to go to the north except for prisoners who want to wear black robes to escape the crime. Chapter 98. Lanja Yulun was not very happy to hear Leonor ask him to pick people in the cell. He was certain that the Night Watch volunteers had been picked out from the cell, but he still hoped that the king could send a real army to help, instead of letting him pick people from those scumbags. Lanja Yulun was a little unhappy, but it was hard to say it clearly, because he knew that this was the best result for him. At least the king did not directly say that he was a liar and had given him enough respect. Lanja Yulun was a little suspicious of whether the king believed in the words "whites go back," but suddenly he heard the king say something. In addition to the staff in the cell, I will send people to Longshi Island to mine the dragon crystals there to make weapons. That is the best weapon to deal with White Walkers. Leono cannot support the Night Watcher in his hands, nor does he want to support the forces of Night Watchmen, but can provide assistance in weapons. After all, there is no need for steel to deal with White Walkers. Your Majesty, can't you send an army? Lanja Yulun couldn't help but feel moved when he saw Leonor mentioning Longjing. The king believed in White Walkers, so why not send additional troops to the northern border? Do you think this is feasible? My army passes through the northern border to the Great Wall. Leono rolled his eyes. This guy is afraid he is not a fool. Why can't it? My Majesty, among the 7 kingdoms, you are the only king, and your army should go wherever you think. Yulun begged. The White Walkers' affairs were extraordinary, and the power of the Night Watcher has been for thousands of years. Nowadays, there is a serious lack of manpower, and we urgently need to replenish our military strength, and we cannot be the kind of scumbag. This is not a crow, isn't it very good at speaking? But no matter how much you praise me, I don't have the army to give you. Leonor complained about Euron in his heart, but he still patiently explained to him. I am very happy with your words, Yulun, as you said, I am the only king of the 7 kingdoms, but my power is not enough to do whatever I want. Once my army enters the north, it will definitely cause the north. The princes, especially Robb Stark, questioned why the king's army did not go to the north but did not go to the south. They would doubt whether it was to deal with the White Walkers or against them. Actually, in addition to giving your army, I would rather give you some advice, such as asking Banniang Stark or Jon Snow to Winterfell to ask for support. The Stark family still trusts their own people. Another, compared to the land of the 7 countries full of disputes, I think you can actually unite with the savages. The return of the White Walkers will be a disaster for all living people. Leono gave advice for the Night Watchman, but was interrupted before he could finish speaking. This is impossible, my Majesty. Lanja Yulun heard Leonor's proposal to unite with the savages and directly and decisively rejected it. For thousands of years, when the White Walkers disappeared in the past, we have been fighting against the savages to prevent them from crossing the Great Wall. We will never cooperate with those savages. So, you would rather accept the rapist or murderer than accept the savages who fought against the White Walkers with you thousands of years ago. Leonor raised his eyebrows. Is there any need for the Night Watcher to raise? His Majesty the King, I have conveyed the message of our Night Watch brothers and received your reply. If you have nothing else, I will leave. Yulun offered to say goodbye with a stern face. Goodbye. Liano saw Lanja reacting so much, and knew there was nothing to say, so he just gave the guests away. Lanja Yulun left without looking back, just because he could not accept Leonor's statement of joining the savages. Leonor sent off Lang Chao, feeling a little sad. There are so many troubles in this world. Game of Thrones is in dire straits, and the White Walkers in the north are eyeing it. One bad thing is that the world is destroyed. If you die, you should add more. Just think about it. The White Walkers in the north are a big danger, but as long as Daenerys doesn't commit suicide and doesn't want to send a dragon to the Great Wall, then the Great Wall in the north can still ensure that this hidden danger will not break out, but it's not a problem to keep it like this. Liano calculated that he must pack up as quickly as possible and formulate a feasible plan to unify the 7 countries, then rush his troops northward, unite all forces that can be united, and go out of the Great Wall to plow and sweep the courtyard. The A-Cup ointment completely eliminates the white ghosts. This is a very long plan. Maybe it is not yourself who completes the last step, but your grandson and great-grandson. But this is not important. What is important is whether the plan can be implemented firmly, and the first step is thorough. How should the plan to unify the 7 countries be implemented? Now among the 7 kingdoms, the Lannister in the western border has been eliminated, but we cannot take it lightly. We must prevent a new Lannister from appearing. The Tyrell family in the River Bay and the Martell family in Dorne entered the Imperial Center through the Covenant. They both made small moves openly and secretly, but the Tyrell family used Margaret as a medium and became more unscrupulous. The Martell family is even more hidden. They are probably still connected with the remnants of Targaryen, a typical rat. Leonor was a little confused about these 2 guys. He felt that political annexation was the best strategy, but the big knife of violent elimination could not be put down, because the Tyrier family was contacting his military officials, which he could not tolerate. The struggle for power has always been like this. There must always be a bottom line and no violent means can be given up. The same is true for the Tyrell family. Once they gain power, they will definitely go further. Even if they will not change their dynasties, there will definitely be a royal power. Leonor feels that if he lets the Tyrell family undermine it, he will still have some effort. What to do if you destroy the western frontier? Wouldn't it be better to just fly across the ocean to be a pawn for the remnant of Targaryen? Even the Tyrier family is like this, let alone the Martell family. Those guys have been away from the mainstream culture of the 7 kingdoms. Even though he has won over Oberon, Prince Daolang, the ruler of the Martell family, has always been hidden. Behind them, I think they have not given up on the idea of helping Targaryen make a comeback. This guy must not give up violent means. The East Valley is currently a scattered sand, and is in the stage of being suspicious of the country. It is a suitable option for direct elimination, but you need to find a suitable reason to fight. Hedgeyondi has now become a vassal in the northern border. On the contrary, the Stark family has lost Ed's constraints and has shown its unruly nature. Sooner or later, they will challenge the Iron Throne and must implement the deal with them as soon as possible. Plan. With Huandi and Duon, he should merge or destroy it at the right time, and choose the right time to destroy the Eastern Territory. At the same time, he should fight with the princes of the Northern Territory and the Hedgian Territory and completely defeat them. Leonor calculated, after doing these things, the 7 kingdoms should be almost done and can achieve true unity. As for how much time it takes to complete this plan, 10, 20, 30 or 40 years, time is not worth mentioning in the face of such a macro plan. Chapter 99. The last day of Aegon's 300 years was spent in busyness and planning, and the beginning of the new year was spent in pure busyness. There are many details to add to Leonor's grand plan. The first thing to be affected is the development and renovation plan of King's Landing. In the King's Hall, Leonor sat upright on the Iron Throne, and together with his close friends such as Dorrit, Vincent and Nun Ake, listening to Davos' report. As a native of King's Landing, Davos made a complete King's Landing development and renovation plan for Leonor, including flattening the entire flea nest, building a large number of public facilities such as houses, public toilets, sewers, and improving road traffic conditions. Build a capable and responsible urban management team to replace the Golden Robe, etc. My Majesty, my plan will not only improve the city, but will also bring a lot of work to idle farmers, who can buy more food and salt with income, which means more taxes. Davos explained his construction plan with some anxiety. Very good, tell me, what do you need? Leonor was quite satisfied with the plan, many of the details he did not notice. I need professional talents and a lot of materials, but these things can be included with them. Golden Dragon. Davos spread his hands slightly to Leonor. How many? It is impossible to complete the entire city's transformation without millions of golden dragons, but in the early stage, about 100,000 golden dragons are enough. Davos swallowed. How much money is left in our vault now? Leonor looked at his accountant leader Ake, an old nun who is good at settlement. Your Majesty, the recent salt tax has just been paid. We now have 140,000 golden dragons. Ake opened his shriveled mouth and reported to Leonor. Davos, the rest depends on you. Leonor said to Davos, and he gave him 40,000 more, hoping that Davos would not let himself down. My Majesty, you are my god. Davos knelt down directly. Dorrit, how are you doing the team I asked you to organize? Leonor turned his head and looked at Dorrit. It's ready. Dorrit nodded to Leonor. Vincent, where is the information about the church? Leonor looked at his breast brother again. It has been collected. Okay, then let's start. Starting today, taxes will be imposed on the church. The church priests will pay the god respect tax, monk respect tax, and nun tax. The church will pay the land tax. The church bell will pay the clock tax. The god respect tax will be a silver deer. Priest tax 1 silver deer. The church is sized, the 20 golden dragons with the bell tower of the holy church, only 1 golden dragon in the prayer hall. The clock tax is sized, the big clock hardware dragon, and the small clock 3 golden dragons. While collecting taxes, a notice was issued. Starting today, all the 7 god monks must be qualified in the examinations held by the kingdom before they can preach. Each monk must pay the assessment fee for 1 silver deer. Anno issued a series of relevant religious decrees. Many of the people in the next head were close ministers. They had participated in the discussion of relevant religious decrees earlier, and now they are calm when they hear the announcement, except for Davos. Davos was stunned at the moment. He never expected that Leonor, who was short of money, would actually reach out to the church. He wanted to persuade him, but suddenly he thought that the church had nothing, and the Targaryen dynasty had done it. They are useless, and now they are just taxing the church, which is no big deal. After calming his surprise, Davos and the king, after proclaiming the decree, he praised the other ministers. Yes, my Majesty. Okay, that's probably it. Today's inner court meeting ends here. Next, let's go to the Prime Minister's tower to attend the outer court meeting. Leonor clapped his hands and ended the inner court meeting. At present, Leonor established an internal and external court based on the ancient Chinese internal and external dynasties. Originally, the internal court gave the policy or goal, and the external court issued a plan and implemented it. However, considering that the 9 ministers of the affairs were not complete, the internal court became the idea. And the role of execution, as for the outer court. In the Prime Minister's tower, when Leonor came over, there was already a quarrel here. This is absolutely impossible. Mesteriel was so angry that she blew her beard and glared. I will never agree with this request. Compared to the anger of the inflatable fish, the red venomous snake Oberon sat leisurely with his hands. Mr. Mays, you are not Miss Sansa, nor Miss Arya, nor Robb Stark. What happened? My Prime Minister and my Attorney General. Leonor walked into the hall of the Prime Minister's tower and asked the angry 2 people with smile. My Majesty, Oberon said he would let their Prince Quentyn marry Sansa Stark and Prince Tristan marry Arya Stark. Mess stood up and complained to Leonor at the first time. Your Majesty, please believe me, this is an absolutely favorable engagement. The Martell family will cherish this gift from you, so as to ensure that both the North and Dorne are under your rule. Oberon stood up and looked at Lyanno explained, his words and attitude were extremely earnest. He probably wanted to use this engagement to dilute the connection between the Martell family and the Targaryen family, so that the Martell family can truly take the team to the Baratheon dynasty. When Leonor faced Oberon's sincerity, he suddenly thought of Prince Dorne's intention and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Your Majesty, you must not agree to the conditions of this Dorne venomous snake. I ask you to consider betrothing Sansa Stark to my son Loras. If Garland is fine, we can also ensure that the North is in your place. Under the rule of the country. Mess also made a request to Leonor. Hee. If Oberon's plan made Leonor hesitate, then Mess' proposal only made him want to laugh, and let the Martell family marry Stark's daughter, at least they could break up with Targaryen. What can the Targaryen family do to marry Stark's daughter, increase their strength so that they can undermine themselves? His Highness Oberon, and Lord Mess, I am the king, not a god. If you have any questions about the outstanding children in your respective families wanting to marry the daughter of the wolf, you should ask them for their personal and their family's opinions. Leonor decided not to express his opinion. He had a good relationship with Ed and admired the character of the Duke of Winterfell, so he did not intend to sell his daughter to others as bargaining chips. Judging from the reactions of Metz and Oberon, they also had a premonition that the anti-ministering intention in the north was decided and that war could start at any time, so they wanted to retain the key to the power in the north. Chapter 100. Leonor's answer made Oberon and Metz silent together, and the Prime Minister's tower fell into a strange silence until Leonor spoke to break. Where is Balistan? Where is Varys? Your Majesty, Lord Balistan is going to choose the royal guard for you. As for Varys, I don't know. Mess replied to Leonor. So that's it, then forget it. Come on, everyone find a seat to sit down. Today is the first meeting of the new year. Leonor waved to Dorit, Vincent, Ake, and Davos behind him. Find a seat by yourself. 8 people can sit on the table of the Prime Minister's tower. Leonor sat in the east, Metz was on his left, Oberon sat on the right, Dorit, Vincent, aka Yi, and Davos sat opposite each other, leaving a free space. I'll introduce you to Davos, my newly appointed Chief of King's Landing, who is responsible for the territorial affairs of King's Landing. This is Ake, and I decided to appoint her as the finance minister. Leonor pointed at Davos. And Ake introduced Oberon and Metz, and they stood up and saluted the king's hand and the chief inspector. Your Majesty, the head of the King's Landing city. Metz looked at Davos, a little reluctant to speak, but was thinking that he was not a former minister or a minister of affairs, so why would he sit here? In this way, he is the territorial affairs officer who belongs directly to me, in charge of the affairs of King's Landing. Because this is more important, he attended the imperial meeting and was only responsible for listening. If there is any matter, he could ask him to report. Leonor explained to Metz. Oh, so that's it. Metz suddenly realized when he heard this, and then laughed. This is not bad, it's not bad. Haha. This smiled awkwardly, and seemed not very satisfied with my appointment of officials. My Majesty, many of your officials have not yet taken their seats, but now our table is almost unable to sit down. Oberon looked at Metz, who was smirking and curled his lips in his heart. The essence of the power of the imperial meeting in front of the emperor was almost unable to sit down. The upper is diluted. Isn't there another one? Davos couldn't help but point to the vacant seat opposite Leonor. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a voice coming. Sorry, everyone, I'm late. With a light voice, Varys, who was holding his hands in the silk sleeves, came late. Please pay attention to the time next time. Leonor beaten in a deep voice, causing Varys to stop being ready to enter the seat. He bowed before sitting opposite him. The empty seats of the imperial meeting were made up. The original imperial meeting was 7 seats plus 1 king's seat. The 8 positions are now full. No, one should be missing, because Balistan also has 1 seat. It seems that I have to order a new table back. Mesteriel looked at the 8 seats that were all full, and couldn't help but shake her head. Order a few more. Leonor mentioned next to him. Ah! Metz opened his mouth wide. The number of people in the imperial meeting will not increase, but the corresponding attendance will increase. And I find that there is no special record of our meeting. Leonor explained to Metz, and later he would ask other officials to go ahead. I came to listen, but there seemed to be no record of the imperial meeting. Metz continued to open his mouth wide, recording. What is that? Go and transfer a few quick scribes to come over. Every imperial meeting in the future will be recorded in detail, especially relevant resolutions. Leonor waved, and Vincent next to him hurriedly called guards to shout. People! Your Majesty, is it necessary? Oberon was also a little surprised when he heard this. The imperial meeting determines the direction of the kingdom. Shouldn't it be treated solemnly? My Highness! Leonor asked Oberon in reverse. But it requires hiring more people, and it also consumes parchment and pen. Metz muttered. I'll spend money. Leonor blocked Metz with just one sentence. No, I mean it's meaningless to do this. Will a big man like us refuse to admit what he said? Metz quickly rejected. My sir, Please rest assured. This is just a record of every detail of our kingdom. Leono laughed and comforted Mess. Come on. Don't worry about such small problems. Let's talk about what problems are there in our kingdom. Discover your problems and submit your problems. Let's solve the problems together to make the kingdom better. I, the king, is more valuable. Leonor is unwilling to worry about small matters and starts the meeting directly. Your Majesty, I just received the news, it was from Essos. Varys spoke in a low voice. Sir Varys, you can amplify the sound a little, so everyone's ears will not be damaged. Leonor said with a smile. Your Majesty, Daenerys Targaryen married a tribe called Drogo in Essos to Cao, a tribe called Drogo, whom her brother Viserys drew her sword at a banquet. He looked at each other and was executed by the Drogo cow. Varys amplified some of his voice. Isn't this good news? Leono still smiled but felt a little nervous. Daenerys married Drogo, which means that her dragon should be born soon. Drogo cow was injured in a tribal infighting and fell seriously ill and dying a month ago. In order to save him, Daenerys hired a witch to perform the legendary blood magic. After her speaking, Leono's smile calmed down. It turned out that the dragon was already born. She didn't save her husband, but hatched it, dragon. Varys paused slightly when she mentioned the word the dragon and swallowed. Dragon. Mess seemed to hear a smile and asked, what a big dragon. Healthy dragon, a dragon that can spit fire. 3. Varys glanced at Leonor opposite, then looked at the serious Oberon, and others with no expression, repeatedly reiterated Daniel Lee afterwards. The giant dragon of silk. Okay, I understand. Where is her current movement? Leonor silently calculated that Daenerys hatched the dragon, and the next thing should be to go to liberate Slave Bay. As a late descendant of the dynasty who was born and in exile, Daenerys had not received relevant political education and was not very mature in some aspects. As long as it was done properly, it would be easy to mix her in Slave Bay. I don't know. I heard that she became Calixi of the Drogo tribe with the dragon, and then fled into the Red Wasteland with the few remaining tribes, and then there was no news. Varys reported to herself known information. Come on the map of Essos. Leonor raised his head and asked the guards to come over to get the map of Essos. Sorry, Your Majesty, Redford has only a map of Westeros, and it was left by Aegon I back then. Mess stood up and replied to Leonor. My Majesty, do you really believe this news? Oberon couldn't help but question the authenticity. After all, the dragon had disappeared for hundreds of years. Let's look for professionals to survey and map the map. No matter what the situation is, we must at least have a reference. Leonor expressed his dissatisfaction to Metz, and said to Oberon, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false, Tanger, I always have to find a way to deal with Lyan's remnants. Chapter 101. Targaryen was brought down by the Baratheon family. Both are natural enemies and there is no possibility of compromise at all. There is no right or wrong, only a position, unless one side gives up everything about it. Daenerys is in poverty. He did not give up, and did not give up to marry the barbarians. Can Leono give up sitting on the Iron Throne? Then how do you want to deal with them? Oberon frowned slightly. He didn't like such an entangled power struggle. First of all, I have to confirm her situation, especially the 3 dragons. Dragon, there is nothing to be afraid of. His Highness Oberon, I think you, as a martyr family, are the most touching. Leonor smiled and said. Aegon I launched the Conqueror War and relied on the dragon to conquer 6 of the 7 kingdoms in a row. However, there was no way to deal with the kingdom of Dorne. The Dornes used reasonable tactics to avoid the dragon flame, and even successfully counterattacked and shot to death a giant dragon. Those are all over, Oberon sighed. A good idea, it's all over the past, let's just care about it now. Leonor smiled and said to everyone seriously, I need someone who knows the land of Essos to answer my questions for me now. I'll do it. Oberon sighed. At this moment, the guards returned with several men in grey robe and bowed to Leonor and said. Your Majesty, the scribe you need is here. It's just right, come, paper for His Highness Oberon. Leonor waved and asked the scribe to give Oberon a piece of paper. Oberon's eyes opened slightly as the thin scribe walked past and lowered a piece of snow-white paper in front of the table. What is this? Oberon took the snow-white paper and felt that it was extremely soft, but it was very fragile, not parchment. You can think of it as another kind of parchment, come on. Your Highness, if you draw too late, I might be buried in the dragon flame next moment. Leonor asked Oberon to call and paint map. Under his repeated urging, Oberon had to give up his curiosity about the paper first, and instead used a charcoal pen sent by another scribe to draw an irregular rectangle on the paper and pointing to the rectangle. The lower left corner of the shape said to everyone, "This is Essos, this is a place of controversy." It was originally connected to Westeros through the arm of Dorne. Legend has it that the son of the forest destroyed it with magic, so it became the Stone Stairs Island today. From the disputed land to the east, there was the former ancient fortress of Valyria, and now it is also a ruin, and further east is. Oberon outlined the Essos for everyone with paper and pen. The map shows the approximate geographical location one by one, and the location of the Dothraki Sea and the Red Desert. When Oberon said almost exactly, Leonor stepped forward and saw that Slave Bay was located in the north of the Red Desert, so he pointed to him and said, "Send people to Slave Bay first. Daenerys will return to Westeros and must come back from here. She brings the dragon, and no one will ignore her existence. Then, she will definitely find out about her movements. Oh, Targaryen, who owns the dragon, is afraid she still has to have some fun there. What then?" Oberyn originally thought that Leonor wanted to arrange an assassination or a siege, but he didn't expect that he would come and go, and that would be gone. Send people to get familiar with the good masters, virtuous masters, and great masters of Slave Bay. I said, where did those slave traders get such big faces? Leonor couldn't help but complain about the evil customs of slave traders. It was probably burned away by the dragon flames, and the ancient Geth Empire was destroyed by the Valyrians who possessed the dragon. Oberon couldn't help laughing. That's really miserable. In short, if you are familiar with those guys, don't rush to offer rewards or something. First, take a look at what our Calixi wants to do, and then have some fun for her. I believe she always has enemies. Leonor also laughed, making everyone laugh. It's over here. Oberon curled his smile, still a little unbelievable. What do you want me to do? Send an army across such a long distance, or send an assassin? Leonor rolled his eyes. My Majesty, if it is an assassin, I have a choice. Varys said in time. Who? That Mormon. Leonor blurted out. He remembered that the old licking dog was indeed Varys' spy, but later he jumped back because he couldn't bear to carry out the assassination. He said this without hesitation, but it made Varys' face pale. Okay. People can't think about it for a moment and always make some mistakes. If that guy comes back, I will forgive his sins. Leonor decided to tell Mormont a little. Licking dogs is not a serious sin. He sincerely told that get Daenerys' life-working guy away and see how far Daenerys can go. Yes. Varys dared not disobey and could only respond. Do you have any other additions to this matter? Leonor asked the others, and the result was that everyone shook their heads. Targaryen is making a comeback, and Baratheon is also worried about. The king is not in a hurry now. Everyone is in a hurry. Anyway, they don't need to live and die with the Targaryen family. At that time, you can just change the king. If you don't, just write this topic well. The resolution is like this. Yes, remember to remind me to ask about the situation regularly. Leonor glanced at the paper handed by the scribe, and saw that the handwriting was clear and the words were clear. He nodded, couldn't help but look at the thin and small scribe, and had some impression of him, so he asked him to remind himself. When do you want to remind you? The scribe asked in a low voice. About the next meeting, who will handle this matter? Vincent, come on. Write it down. Leonor assigned the task to Vincent before Varys was about to take on the task, so he asked him to let him go. The scribe took the record and turned his head to everyone and said. Okay, let's start the next issue now. Vincent, don't forget to reply to me how you arranged it. Before the new issue began, Leonor mentioned to the Brest brothers. Your Majesty, I'll make a record too. I'm afraid I'll forget it. Vincent was a little confused, but came to his senses and felt that he might forget it if he talked too much, so he also asked for a piece of paper and what he was about to do. Remember it. Let's talk about the next issue quickly. If there is no issue, I will announce the end of the meeting. If something happens in the future, whoever is responsible for it. Leonor pointed at everyone and scolded. Your Majesty, Mrs. Sheila Heen of Herrenberg has passed away. She has no descendants, and the Heen family has no descendants. Met stepped forward and asked something. So, What's the problem? Leono asked. According to tradition, the kingdom should have chosen a new Count of Herrenberg. Mess reminded Leonor and couldn't wait to add, if you don't have the right person, I can recommend a few. I'll talk about this later, and the topic will be recorded to the next time, the next issue. Leonor directly held on. He was about to reclaim the territory now, how could Herrenberg be sent out again? Chapter 102. Will the next issue be so soon? Mess slashed his mouth and said. Adelaine Earl of the Isle is dead. Who is this? Leono was speechless. Why did Lord Metz either report this or that death? When Stannis surrounded the counterattack of Wind and Sniffle Castle, the Earl of the Isle you canonized. Mess reminded carefully. Ah? Oh, this man. Why did he die at a young age? Has he participated in the battle to fight against the Western Front? Leonor remembered. Wasn't that a young knight attendant who killed Stannis's enthronement? The Earl of the Island was awarded the title. I don't know that his widow, Ms. Anna Buckler from Coppergate, hopes to inherit her husband's territory. Metz made an application for the widow of the lower noble. Check the cause of his death. Leonor was a little irritated. He couldn't let go of things easily. He asked someone to review them first. Yes. Metz did not dare to neglect, and nodded quickly, then waved to the scribe, and asked the scribe to give him a note, and then wrote down the problem and let him do it. Reward this matter next time, the next issue. Leonor first recorded it with the scribe, and then asked the next issue. The lords of Crown Nest City and Rainhouse City ask you to give them golden dragons to make up for their losses in the war in the western frontier. Mess quickly remembered the death of the Earl of the Island, and at the same time said to Leonor, start the next thing. What about the opinions of the Prime Minister and the Chief Inspector? Leonor looked at Messe and Oberon calmly. Your Majesty, your vault doesn't have much money. Metz asked a sincere question, but what he didn't know was that the vault was not too much, but was completely gone. The last amount of money had been transferred to Davos for use. Govern the King's Landing City. Your Highness. Leonor saw that Mess could not say anything, so he looked at Oberon opposite him. My Majesty, it is the duty of the nobles and knights to provide military service to the throne, and this is not a job. Oberon spoke more clearly, and according to your declaration and announcement, the rewards for this war are all won by individuals. It was agreed in advance that it was entirely up to personal abilities. The Crocun City and Yawa City were unable to gain it in the war. That was their own abilities, and there was no additional reward. If the Crow Nest City and Yawa City are rewarded, what should we do if the lords of Tongmen City and other fiefdoms use this to seek rewards? How much do you plan to spend to satisfy them next time you go to war? Mr. Mess, did you hear it? Leonor looked at the inflatable fish again. Okay, I will reject this request for you. Mess nodded repeatedly. Slippery guy. Facing the inflatable fish that nodded repeatedly, Leonor and Oberon cursed in their hearts. Metz would not be unable to see the relevant interests, but he did not want to be this evil person if he didn't speak up, so he deliberately gave the evil person to Leonor and Oberon. Leonor became more and more angry as he looked at it. He thought that since he had become a villain, it would be better to do it all in one step, and said to Metz. Let the Earl of Crow's Nest City and the Earl of Rainhouse City go back and think about it carefully. How much effort did they put into the war? I will give them the Iron Throne. Do they dare to ask for it? This was a bit heavy. The inflatable fish was so scared that he held his breath and did not dare to speak. However, Leonor did not continue to give him a look, but said to the scribe. Record this issue and remind me to ask those two guys about their responses, the next issue. Your Majesty, my supervisor has heard that recently a bandits called themselves Little Group have emerged in the western region. They are moving everywhere, burning farmlands in the western region and attacking villages. This time the question is Oberon, what is raised is the issue of public security in the western region. Lion Group? What does they have to do with Lannister? What did Landeo do? Where is the army in his hands? What are the new lords in the west doing? Ask them for me, Abal and Lola S. Rogmer, do they want to welcome Lannister's return? Leonor asked several questions in a row. Even though Oberon was extremely calm, he couldn't help but sweat on his forehead. He asked the scribe to take paper and note the problem, so that he could follow the implementation. Next topic. The meeting was silent. No problem. Leonor's voice heavier. Your Majesty, there are still some questions, but I can't remember it for the moment now. Mess explained to Leonor in a nearly mumbled voice that he couldn't remember it. So this is the meaning of recording. Go back and think about it carefully, write it together with a pen, and raise it at the next meeting. Leonor snorted. A good memory is not as good as a bad pen, and the West Era still have short knowledge. Now. Yes, yes. Maze nodded repeatedly, and Oberon and others next to him also snatched their eyebrows awkwardly. They also had a lot of things, but they didn't just forget it, but they couldn't remember it when the matter was about to come. Perhaps, sometimes it takes some notes, and everyone thinks of it. Can you give me some paper and pen? Oberon spoke politely to the scribe beside him. He noticed that although the white paper was fragile, it was lighter than parchment, and should be cheaper to take notes with you. Good. Do business for the kingdom, free of charge. Leonor saw Oberon asking for paper and pen, but waved his hand generously, asking the scribe to have enough paper and pen to distribute it. That's great, thank you for your generosity, your majesty. Oberon couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and accept it. After everyone got the paper and pen, except for Metz, who already lives in the Prime Minister's tower, everyone else chose to leave. Leonor did not leave. He stayed in the conference hall and waited for the scribes to sort out the meeting minutes and read them carefully. After a moment of the recorded content, nodded slightly, first glanced at the scribe, and saw 7 or 8 people, so he asked. Who among you is the leader? The scribes had a low status and no one spoke. Everyone just silently looked at a thin guy. Your Majesty, my name is Stephen. The thin scribe naturally stepped forward. Okay, Stephen, you will be the recorder here in the future. You will be responsible for directing other record waiters and keeping records of the meeting. You have sorted out today's meeting minutes well, and you must prepare the topics for the next meeting in advance. Leonor asked the scribe. Yes, Your Majesty, what issues need to be removed? The thin Stephen was very smart. The one about Herrenberg. Leonor glanced at Metz next to him and scratched the records about Herrenberg Lord on the paper with his fingertips. He did not want to hear this issue at the next meeting. Recorder Stephen bowed, and Metz, who was standing beside him, held his stomach and slashed his mouth, trying to say something, but finally he held it back. He felt that he should not mess with this matter. It is better to speak, but today I have offended His Majesty the King because of many things. Chapter 103. Leonor brought not only meeting minutes, but also a new meeting model, which greatly improved the work efficiency of the imperial meeting. After several meetings, many backlog problems were solved, and the king, the series of ministers with the core of hand also had things to do, and the power of the kingdom began to work. The ever-moving power will drive the country to change continuously and towards strength and prosperity, and this also requires more talents, and the bachelors of the school city make up for it. Previously, Leonor asked someone to send a raven to Suession, asking them to send more bachelors to serve him. Suession's chief manager also regarded this as an opportunity to expand his influence, and combined ravens and botany. A total of 16 bachelors from various fields such as pharmacy, history, economics, medicine, military, and forging went to King's Landing. Leonor held a banquet in the King's Hall to welcome the bachelors and allocate their positions on their subjects and majors. After a round of understanding, Leonor passed the interview and assigned on the spot. Among the many bachelors from Suession, except for the Bachelor of Economics, Marseille can directly serve as the Minister of Finance. Other bachelors are not enough to directly serve as the Minister of Finance. Graydon, a Bachelor of Military Science, and Barry Dondy-Ryan, became the candidates for the Minister of Military Science. Bachelor of Science, Melbourne, Cara, and Forging Moore, businessman Tob Mott, became the candidates for the Minister of Agriculture, and Bachelor of Pharmacy, Abal, Rayang, Bachelor of Medicine, Bourne, and Sam went to Pachel as assistants. The arrival of the Bachelor added a lot of people, because there were no bachelors assigned to their positions in the major they studied, and Leonor did not deport him, but stayed at Red Fort to arrange tasks, such as the Bachelor of Ravens. Janer was responsible for establishing a new one. Raven Farms, breed more ravens. Alvin, a Bachelor of War Horse Science, is responsible for establishing horse farms, and is responsible for cultivating better war horses. Those bachelors who are not professionally available can also carry out popular education work to train scribes for him, professional talents like accounting. Among the 9 ministers in the current affairs, after such supplements, although the positions of the law ministers, etiquette ministers, and foreign ministers are still empty, fortunately, Key links such as military and economics can already operate. Leonor assigned personnel in place, and then began to arrange work, requiring the popularization of new technologies and tools, the production of new armor and weapons, as well as the development of King's Landing, the training and command of the army, etc. These things were already planned, and now the talents are in place and can be directly invested in implementation. Although there is still some funds left, Leonor's vault has begun to be abundant. First of all, Donald Noy from the Midsummer Hall to King's Landing City. He brought Leonor 500,000 golden dragons. This is the wealth accumulated by the Midsummer Hall over the past few years by firing pottery. Now all of them have been escorted to King's Landing. The city is for his use. Immediately after Donner, religious taxation CO chaired by the garrison commander Dorit and Vincent was also effectively implemented. Faced with sword force, the archbishop and 7 archbishops gritted their teeth and handed over to Leonor taxes of up to 200,000 golden dragons a year. With 700,000 golden dragons as the foundation, the renovation plan of Junlin City was officially implemented. The former flea nest was flattened, and it was transformed into a blacksmith workshop, piled up bunches of blast furnaces, continuously creating various types farm tools and iron supplies. Leonor currently has a manual support stage for agriculture. Not only is it allowed to own land, but it also has the use of agricultural tools and seeds on credit. After the farmers harvest, they use grain to pay the debt. This successfully formed an early cycle, waiting for the farmers till the farming technology was mature and the kingdom had enough food. At that time, it could rely on resources to regulate the market and stabilize the income of craftsmen and farmers. Leonor made drastic moves on the area centered on King's Landing, but was much gentler to the Storm Land. After Kootenai Ponlos arrived at King's Landing with Adric, he appointed Donner Noy as the new Stormland governor will take over at Stormfort instead of himself, check the territory of the Stormland, and then implement the work of dividing and increasing production. The Stormland does not belong only to the Baratheon family, but also to the families of Buckler, Ismond, Wild, Maljan, Sven, Karen, Fair, Searmy, and other families. It is impossible to collect the territory in one breath, but you can take it slowly. Leonor's main goal is to allocate the territory directly under Fengzi Castle to ensure that the land is cultivated and grain can be produced stably. This is the biggest goal. Another goal is to ask them to continue to pay taxes and continue to provide military services to him. This is their own responsibility. If they cannot continue to serve, or the service results are not ideal, they will directly take back their territory. In short, there are ways to deal with it, and the order to give grace is redundant. Donner Noy went to the Stormland, and Kootenai Ponlos, who originally brought Robert's illegitimate son Adric, went to the west to serve as the governor of the west, responsible for the various governance work of the western aristocrats. He also applied the Stormland model, mainly ensure land production, the nobles are obedient, and if they are not obedient, they will suppress them and take back the territory. In this way, the entire king's territory, the Stormland, and some western territory had all fallen under Leonor's rule and began to operate according to his will. Just as this prosperous time, some people complained. Inside the Prime Minister's tower, there is another new imperial meeting. Leonor sits high on the throne. In his lower position, Metz sits opposite Oberon, Balistan, and Davos respectively, and the remaining ministers they sat at their own tables. Because there are too many people, it is impossible to sit at the same table together. Therefore, in the new imperial meeting, except for Leonor, who was the host, each person had a table with paper and pen on it. As for the scribes who recorded the meeting, they sat on it. On the long table in the corner. Your Majesty, you must deal with the traitors in the Iron Islands as soon as possible. Those guys are so hateful. Mess's face was flushed and he sat upwards on the table and said, 4 months ago, they took advantage of the situation. You occupied Callan Bay when you attacked Callan Bay, and a month ago they gave up Callan Bay and attacked the Shield Islands. The battles of the pirates were despicable and shameless, burning all farmlands and buildings, and plundering them. After the population, we must not sit idly by. Facing the endless talk of Mess, Leonor even wanted to yawn. The Iron Islands were very cruel. Fortunately, the ones who plundered were not his territory. Callan Bay is in the hands of the northern border, while the Shield Islands is a key maritime land controlled by the River Bay. Those pirates have escaped now. Oberon was a little impatient. That despicable baron was once depressed by his Robert, but now he has become king again. This is Mess wanted to arouse Leonor's anger so that he could send troops to destroy the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands attacked the north. I remember that the Stark family had a adopted son of Greyjoy. How was he? Leonor suddenly said. Chapter 104. Hearing Leonor mentioning the adopted son of the Greyjoy family in the Stark family, many officials in the Prime Minister's tower were shocked, and the red venomous snake Oberon also stood up and went to Leonor first. A gift, then continued. Your Majesty, this is exactly what I want to report to you. The North has sent an envoy, who is the only son of Baron Greyjoy. In the 289th year of Aegon, just a few years after Robert ascended the throne, the Iron Islands launched a rebellion. Baron Greyjoy had already become king at that time, but was eventually defeated by the coalition forces commanded by Robert. His 2 sons were killed in the war, and his only son, Theon Greyjoy, was taken to Winterfell by Ed Stark, which was the one who was raised by Theon Greyjoy. If the correct historical trend was followed, Theon Greyjoy should have taken advantage of the tight war in the Hegian area in the north and persuaded Robb, who was commanding the troops, to return to the Iron Islands by looking for reinforcements, which eventually triggered a series of a bleak fate, but when the western border was conquered, the northern border army could not eat Jinheo City, and there was no trouble at all. Therefore, there was no saying that they would ask for help from the Iron Islands. Theon avoided his own fate and was able to come to King's Landing as an envoy. What does Robb Stark want to say? Leonor leaned into the chair, making himself feel comfortable while thinking about something. The messenger from the north actually conveyed the message through Oberon. It looked read: the Viper sets up a line with the north through the Stark sisters. Both Tyriel and Martell want to contact the Stark family. Leonor did not promise either party, but did not stop them from further action. He had the idea of letting go. Now, Oberon robbed him. The opportunity has come. Robert Stark wants to ask His Majesty to release his 2 sisters, and his aunt, Lisa Tully. That's all. Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. The Stark family also mentioned one thing, saying that it has been almost 10 years since the South has not seen winter. Oberon mentioned another thing. I haven't seen winter for almost 10 years, yes. Since the Battle of Fengzi Castle, Westeros has not seen winter for a long time. This does not mean a good harvest, but rather means that the next winter will be long. The longer the winter time, the colder the climate in the north. Robb Stark is showing weakness to himself. Without the support of the south, the northern border would not be able to survive such a long winter year. The big wolf is also very smart. He actually shows weakness to himself from this aspect. Leonor praised Robb Stark in his heart, and then continued to ask. What about the Iron Islands? Well, by the way, the messenger he sent was Greyjoy. Yes, Theon Greyjoy also said that he will replace the North and his brother Robb comes to King's Landing to serve you allegiance. Oberon conveyed the meaning of the North, and the people of the North want to sold the Theon and the Iron Islands for Sansa and Arya. This kind of allegiance has no effect. My Majesty, if Robb Stark does not want to betray you, he should come to King's Landing to be loyal to you. Mess spoke angrily, and the northern border was also haunted by the Iron Islands. But he did not have any empathy with the North. Instead, he felt that the Stark family was annoying and that the Stark sisters were good hostages. What do you think? Leonor did not reply, but looked at the people in the field. I think as a king, you shouldn't use this method to rule the country. Davos stood up directly. What method? Leonor blinked. Taking hostages for women and women. Davos spoke bluntly, causing a stir in the palace. Messe and Oberon's faces were a little unhappy, but Barristan showed a look of praise. Sir Seaworth, you don't understand Westeros' political rules. Don't comment, sit down. Leonor twitched the corner of his mouth. The Onion Knight was really brave enough to say it, and it was a bit of a show-off. But also a bit sincere. Yes, Your Majesty. Davos sat back obediently. Are there any other ideas? You can raise them. Leonor asked. There was a whispering discussion in the Prime Minister's tower, and no one stood up. Since no one says it again, then my 3 ministers, please tell me how we should respond to the requirements of the northern border. Leonor asked the 3 ministers in the front of the imperial court to give a plan. He is not a god, and he cannot give a plan every time. Reject. Mace, of course, rejected all proposals from the north unless Robb Stark came to King's Landing to sworn allegiance. I think the Stark sisters can be released, release goodwill to the north, and avoid war, but leave Lisa Tully as a hostage. Oberon also gave his own plan. I think sending Lisa Tully to Winterfell is His Majesty Robert's decision. As for the Stark sisters, they have never been hostages. Balistan also gave his own opinion, but it is not from a political perspective. Just do as the Great Knight. Leonor thought for a moment and finally chose Balistan's plan. He wanted to kill Lisa Tully directly, but this matter was a bit corrupt, so he should first take a look and try to kill the person to the north. Your Majesty. Mess and Oberon spoke together. If you have different opinions, you can mention them. By the way, Theon Greyjoy stays, I will meet you another day. Leonor held down Metz and Oberon's opinions. Your Majesty, I object to letting Sister Stark leave King's Landing. Mess tried to object. Yet. I know. Leonor nodded. Lesha Tully is related to the Eastern Territory and is not suitable for being sent to the Northern Territory. Oberon also made his opinion that the Stark family is very likely to control the power of the Eastern Territory through Lesha Tully. I know, okay, I've received your opinions. Leonor waved his hand. Mess's idea didn't need to be cared about. Oberon wanted to release the Stark sisters but wanted to keep Lisa Tully. I want to ease the relationship with the North but not increase the strength of the North. He did not want to start a war with the North, and wanted to gain the favor of the Stark family through this matter, and then promote the marriage between North and Dorne, thereby fading the connection between Dorne and Targaryen, and also increasing the horse through marriage with North and increasing the horse the Taylor family has the right to speak. I have so many thoughts and thoughts. I am indeed a very experienced guy, but I won't let Dorne marry Northland. Leonor affirmed Oberon's idea in his heart, but he didn't care. He would never allow the Seven Kingdoms to marry privately. All kingdoms must be included in his rule and operated according to his ideas. Brienne, turn around and send Hanya to Sansa and Arya. Leonor suddenly remembered and whispered to Brienne who was guarding the seat. He had never brought Sister Stark before. Use it as a hostage or bargaining chip. Yes, Your Majesty. Brienne, who had already changed into white armor, nodded quickly. Chapter 105. Leonor whispered to Brienne on the stage, but everyone in the audience still refused to give up. Metz stood up and shouted Your Majesty first, then said. Can't let it go. My sir, let's talk about the Iron Islands. With Theon Greyjoy, we can solve the Iron Islands in a peaceful way. Leonor interrupted Metz's spell casting and went to the he mentioned his intention. The way to peace. Metz choked. He remembered that he was still on the issue of the Iron Islands just now. Wait, His Majesty the King wants to solve the Iron Islands in a peaceful way? Of course, Theon Greyjoy is the only son of Baron Greyjoy. As long as Baron Greyjoy dies, he will be the only king of the Iron Islands. Leonor spoke for granted. But Your Majesty, Baron Greyjoy is not dead yet. Mess wanted to remind Leonor that the Iron Islanders would not accept peace. The Greyjoy family's proverbs are strong wins harder than suffering. They advocate plundering. It's okay, he will die soon. Leonor was very confident. Baron Greyjoy was one of the 5 kings who were originally determined to be fate. He would die from the murder of his brothers and he didn't need to be himself anymore, go to the labor army to fight. But Metz still wanted to defend himself. My sir, what do you want to deal with this matter? Leonor asked Metz about his thoughts so that the Prime Minister would not bend around again. Your Majesty, I ask you to call on the princes to flatten the Iron Islands as if you were conquering the western frontier. Metz directly expressed his thoughts. No money. Leonor gave a straightforward sentence. Didn't you just collect taxes from the church? Metz was unhappy, but he knew that Leonor had just collected a large amount of taxes from the church. Used it. Leonor's face suddenly became smelly. These Tyriels couldn't see that they had money. Knowing how much money their curry had, they wanted to urge themselves to go to war. What they owe them. Used it. Metz's voice increased a few degrees. Where do I have to tell you about money? Leonor was also angry. Tyriel's hand was stretching longer and longer. Margaret was not pregnant yet. If she was pregnant, it would be fine. Is Tyriel's right? He was to be brought down and then protect the young emperor to command the world. Leonor's sudden increase of voice echoed inside the Prime Minister's tower, causing Mess's arrogance that was originally about to explode. Then he stopped. Oberon, Balistan, other ministers and scribes all shut up and whispered. He didn't dare to show off his anger because they saw Leonor so angry for the first time. Seeing that everyone was not talking, Leonor was still angry and wanted to curse a few words if he wanted to. However, thinking about this occasion, he still gave up and snorted coldly. Continue the meeting. The matter of the Iron Islands was decided, so Theon Greyjoy stayed in King's Landing for the time being and asked him to see me later. As for the Stark sisters, they were never my prisoners or hostages. At any time you can leave. I don't allow any of you to make things difficult for you, but let them give Robb Stark a message, and say, the Duke of Winterfell and the Princes of the North are related to the Peace of the North, so they are ready for themselves, don't going the wrong path. Next issue. Leonor forced the end of the Iron Islands in the north. There was no sound below. Is there no topic? Leonor asked. There was still no sound. Since there is no topic, let's end today's meeting. Leonor stood up and left with his sleeves, and Brienne and others quickly followed. Leaving the Prime Minister's tower, Brienne returned the great sword handing as Leonor asked, and brought the message to the Stark sisters. Leonor felt a little bored. He looked at the situation in the city and wanted to go back to his private residence to Jingwenjing. Suddenly, a maid with a white skirt, slim figure and beautiful face came over. What's wrong? Leonor recognized the maid as someone around Margaret, thinking she was here to be a lobbyist, and her face was not very good looking. Your Majesty, the Queen asked me to inform you that she had just gone to find Master Paisley. The maid was careful to talk to the king in the face of the bad face. Looking for Paichel? Is there anything wrong with her body? Leonor relieved his face. It turned out that it was not for the Prime Minister's tower. It was right. Margaret shouldn't have known about the meeting in the Prime Minister's tower so soon. Content. Yes, the Queen wanted to vomit this morning. After Sister Lolly's reminder, she went to Master Paisier for a checkup. The maid raised her head carefully, looked at the handsome king with black hair and blue eyes, and looked at him. Expression changes. Are you pregnant? Leonor heard vomiting, and suddenly thought of the pregnancy reaction, and thought of the conflict with Metz just now. He really got whatever he wanted. Speaking of which, his body is normal. It's time to have sex with Margaret for a while. The maid didn't know how to reply. Can't speak. Leonor's voice heavier. Mr. Paichel said it might be. The maid could only reply truthfully. Okay, I understand. Leonor thought of the child in Margaret's belly, his face softened a little and nodded slightly. He planned to go and see Margaret first. No matter what, face skills need to be done, and he will talk about it when the child is born. Leonor was just about to change direction, when a young grey-haired man rushed over from the king's hall. He quickly approached Leonor and whispered to him. Your Majesty, the Archbishop and the Archbishop are here. People in the church? Leonor was slightly stunned, and then came over. Those dead monks should have come to discuss matters related to religious examinations and religious taxation with him. Maybe they wanted to ask their subordinates to show mercy. Hee. Leonor sneered at the Archbishop and Archbishop who had not met, but turned his head but said with a kind look to Margaret's maid. Tell the Queen, just say that I care about her body very much, keep her in a good mood, and apologize to her for me, saying that I have something to do here and I will go after I have a job. Yes. The maid nodded repeatedly. Go. I will go over there tonight. Leonor looked up and down at the slender and beautiful maid, and suddenly a smile appeared on her face. Whether Margaret was pregnant or not, she would not be able to sleep tonight. Yes. The maid was embarrassed by Leonor's view, but she did not avoid it. Instead, she turned around intentionally and fiddled with the curves of her waist and hips at Leonor. As the Queen's maid, she had sharing the invisible task of the king's desires, for the Queen can effectively prevent the king's favor from being transferred to other places and not flowing to outsiders' fields. Leonor watched the maid's back curve without looking much, and took back his gaze and walked towards the king's hall. Women are just a seasoning for life. The power of the kingdom is something worth paying attention to. If you have power, what kind of woman does not have it? Chapter 106. In the king's hall, the empty fireplace was wiped clean, and the fat archbishop was pacing back and forth while the 7 archbishops were watching. He looked up at the 7 old ones who seemed to die at any time. The archbishop wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to speak, so he could only continue to pace until a shout came. The king of the Andals, the Loinas, the ancestors, the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, guarding the entire territory, Leonor Baratheon I arrived. With the reputation of the preparatory guards in white armor, Leonor wore a golden crown and a ribbon, walked into the king's hall with great strides, followed by a series of guards. "Your Majesty!" The archbishop and the 7 archbishops stood together and bowed to Leonor, who was walking in. Leonor raised his hand slightly, and the 8 old men immediately stood up. "Your Majesty, today we are here to talk to you about the monk exam and the taxes you stipulated for the 7 gods." "What are you talking about with me?" Leonor did not step onto the Iron Throne, but stood opposite the 8 old men. "Those taxes were not formulated for the 7 gods, but for you. Do monks have no country? God hasn't taught you to be loyal to the country?" The 8 bishops were suddenly stopped. "Or, as long as the monk is responsible to the 7 gods, he can completely ignore the king and completely ignore everything in the country." Leonor's voice became low and oppressive. "No, Your Majesty, the doctrine of the 7 gods is definitely not like this." The archbishop quickly waved his hands to reject it. He dared not admit such words. If he admits it, the 7 gods church would have to be eliminated in large quantities. "Then what do you want to come to me and say?" Leonor's brows were still frowning. "My Majesty, we know your difficulties, so why do you treat us like this?" The archbishop sighed. "When we conquer the western frontier, we should not urge you to pay debts, but that is ultimately the money you owe to the church. And you promised to keep a seat for us in the imperial meeting. I am the king, and I will do my best. Among my 9 ministers in the imperial meeting, there are still positions of law ministers, etiquette ministers, and foreign ministers. If the church has a suitable candidate, I can recommend it to me." Leonor, suddenly when I think about it, I forgot that the church is also a place with a large number of talents. The church is not a place that specializes in cultivating monks. They will also train some scribes and nuns. These people are proficient in accounting, delivery, comfort, and healing skills, and are even better than bachelors at some point. The church also uses it. These people influenced the general public and received huge wealth from them. The king cannot collect taxes from everyone, but the monks of the 7 gods can. "Really?" The archbishop's eyes lit up. He didn't expect there would be any unexpected gains. "Of course, but I have a requirement, that is, the personnel you send must have corresponding abilities. I don't want idiots who only know how to eat meat and drink alcohol." Leonor did not hide his contempt for the fallen side of the church. "Haha." The archbishop could only smile at Leonor. After seeing Leonor for a long time, he could only speak again. "My Majesty, we still have some small requests. I hope you can lift the monk. In the exam, your actions are tantamount to limiting our spread of the faith of the 7 gods. I hope that you idiots, the faith of the 7 gods will sooner or later become as smelly as mud." Leonor was not polite. "My actions are to help you improve the quality of the monk team. Don't try to negotiate terms with me about this matter, because there is no condition to discuss." Leonor blocked anything the archbishop and others wanted to say. "Your Majesty, can't you really talk about it?" The archbishop's face turned red with annoyed tone. "Megil once offered a reward for the armed forces of the church. Do you think I can give you a reward? And how many soldiers will my army be happy to accept such a reward?" Leonor's tone was soft, but his words made the 8 church seniors' faces turn white in an instant. "Leave. You don't need to take the exam, but it's better to be more obedient, cooperate with all my actions, and send your recommended candidates. You are still the bishop, otherwise you will wait to go to the 7th level of heaven to repent to Heavenly Father." Leonor issued an order to expel guests without hesitation. The 8 church leaders stayed stuck for a long time, but eventually lost all their means and left the king's hall dejectedly. After the 8 bishops left, Theon Greyjoy, who came from the north, was taken into the king's hall and held a pilgrimage to Leonor on the Iron Throne. Theon Greyjoy is a slender, handsome young man with a black hair. He stepped across the shining floor with a novel look and saw more than a dozen white-clothed warriors guarding the throne made of countless iron bars, and the man sitting on it immediately knelt down on one knee. The Andals, the Loinas, and the ancestors, the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, guarding the whole territory, respected His Majesty Leonor. I only represent the Duke of Winterfell and the Guardian of the North, Robb Stark, to you pay tribute, please accept my respect. Please get up. Theon Greyjoy, I've heard your name, and it seems that Lord Ed Stark taught you well. Leonor stood up from the Iron Throne with a smile, words and tone. My Majesty, I learned a lot from my father. Theon stood up and felt some pressure and became restrained when facing the man from the throne to the front of him. No need to do this, relax. Your adoptive father and I are good brothers. What have you learned from Lord Ed? Leonore patted Theon on the arm and walked outside. Tolerance, honor, and what a noble deserves. Theon felt a little flattered as he grabbed his arm. The king was more approachable than he thought. That's very good. These are what a ruler deserves. You will definitely inherit the Iron Islands in the future. You need to govern the people there. You have not yet contacted them, right? Leonore asked casually with a smile. Yes, but I will rule them. Theon straightened his chest. I believe you will, but your task is a bit heavy. Leonore continued to pat Theon on the shoulder with a smile. Because of my father's rebellion. Theon was a little nervous, but he still took the initiative to talk about this matter. That's secondary. He probably just lost to my brother and your other father. There are always times when I figure it out. I mean the railway of the Iron Islands. Leonore took the seat. Grateful teachings. Railway. Theon was surprised. It seems you don't remember it, right? You were adopted by Lord Ed when you were very young and probably have never been in contact with the railway. The railways of the Iron Islanders are just robberies, and are the people in the north robbing. My father will not allow it. Theon replied. Chapter 107. Theon is talking about Ed Stark. The people in the north also have a tradition of looting. Before they were ruled by the Seven Kingdoms, they would go south to rob each winter. Every head of Stark's family gave it as his duty to lead the people of the entire northern border through the winter year, and sometimes he will lead the way to rob, but Ed will not do so. This is his nobleness. He never builds his happiness on the pain of others. Leonore nodded in praise of Ed. Your Majesty, I will correct the railway, in the name of my father Ed Stark. Theon saw Leonore's intention and made his own assurance that he would restrain the residents of the Iron Islands. A good noble shouldn't brag. Leonore sneered, making Theon's face turn red when he smiled. Seeing this, he quickly reached out and pulled his arm again. Don't care, you're too full. When it comes to the implementation of railways, you can't stop your people at all, but you will be forced by them. No, I will. Theon was a little stubborn. If this happens, if you don't implement the railway, your people will starve to death. Leonore saw that Theon was dissatisfied, so he assumed a situation for him. Ah! Theon was surprised. The Iron Islands, except for iron ore, are salt ore. Those things cannot be eaten or drunk. The Iron Islanders do not rob, what should they eat or drink? Leonore pointed out the key points for Theon. Why don't you sell iron and salt? Theon couldn't understand why his tribe members didn't do business. Yes. Why don't you sell iron for salt? But if iron is made into weapons, Leonore smiled. Robbery with weapons is much faster than doing business. What does the Iron Islands call this? Pay iron money. It's really much faster. Theon asked himself, doing this is not only fast but also simple. After all, selling iron and salt into money also costs money to buy food and clothes, but if you rob, you don't need to worry about so much, you can just take anything over. Paying iron money is much faster than selling salt and iron for money, and then using money to buy clothes and food. Your tribe members have developed a habit. If the railway is stopped, they will have no income, no food, no clothes. What should you do at this time? Leonore asked Theon continuously. Theon couldn't answer. He thought, probably he could only implement railways at this time. So, don't be too full of words. Leonore patted Theon on the shoulder. After all, he was still a young man. Your Majesty, what should you do if it were you? Theon asked with a flash of inspiration. Good question, but you can't do what I can. Leonore shook his index finger at Theon. Why? Theon was dissatisfied. I will use various methods to follow my path, so that the people will walk according to my path, and they will also happily embark on this path, but the nobles will oppose me for this, and then, I will kill them, can you? Leonore asked at Theon with a smile. Of course. Theon bulged his chest, but he was just killing people, so he could do it himself. Haha, do you know who to kill? After you kill the nobles, who will you use to replace them? What if the new nobles still oppose you? Leonore spread his hands to Theon and put forward a series of ideas. I can use slave labor. Theon thought of the substitute, but thought that slave laborers might oppose themselves as new nobles, so he said, kill everyone who opposes me. Haha. Leonore smiled without saying a word, and did not continue on this topic, but said. Your father Baron sent your uncle to snatch Callan Bay. I think your brother is angry, right? My uncle didn't occupy the place for a long time. He took the boat away afterwards. Rob was a little angry and he scolded me. Theon nodded, a little aggrieved. The Leda family cannot defend Callan Bay. What does this have to do with you? Leonor pretended to be a question. He was just a little angry. Xinyan was not sincere. He still cared about Rob's rebuke, but it was useless to mind after all. Young master, I can't do anything to him. Leonor explained to Theon, and said that he was a little angry with Rob, but he couldn't do anything to him. Robur cared about Sansa and Arya very much, otherwise he would have the idea of reproclaiming kingdom and making the north independent. Theon glanced at Leonor, lowered his head slightly, and reminded him with murmurs. The Stark family is very good at this point. They value family relationships very much. You think that's the same? Leonor didn't care about Theon's reminder. Me? Theon pondered a little. He didn't know if the Stark family regarded him as a family member. Ed has read you several times in front of me. Leonor had to patch Ed when he saw Theon looking suspicious. Is that? Theon cheered up. Without saying anything else, Ed's father really cared about him. Of course, he said you were a little proud child, but it was a pity that he could not really enter your heart. You, like Jon, often mind your identity. Leonor casually made up words for Ed, and take out the Stark family's illegitimate son Jon Snow to talk about it. Theon's lips moved, and he didn't say anything, but some tears oozed out of his eyes, and he hurriedly lowered his head. He is a scheming person and doesn't tell outsiders much. Leonor reached out and patted Theon for comfort. My father, where did he go? Theon wiped his eyes and asked Ed's whereabouts. He said he went to Bingley City to meet Rob, and Mrs. Caitlin was with him, and I sent him soldiers, but later the team lost its traces. The last place they appeared was Shitang Town. I heard that the Frey family was there have been stationed there, and the Demon Mountain has also taken the army to the Demon Mountain. Dorne's Sand Snake Group has captured Demon Mountain in Deep Cave City. Leonor explained the whole story to Theon. I want to go there and have a look. Theon asked. Go. I have sent back the ice sword to Sansa and Arya. You can go to the ruins of Shitang Town to see. If you find anything, you can tell me if you go back to the north or the Iron Islands. Let's do it yourself. Leonor responded casually, by the way, when you go back to inherit the Iron Islands, you can inherit your father's title. Leonor gave Theon a promise that he could inherit the promise of the King of the Iron Islands. How can this work? This is not in accordance with the rules. Theon was shocked. You should know that Rob is not the King of the North yet, so how could he become a king? The rules are set by people. Please care about what he does. You inherited the King of the Iron Islands. In terms of railways, you can do it yourself. Leonor said nothing, just let Theon take care of it. Your Majesty, please rest assured. If I become the King of the Iron Islands, I will definitely restrain my people and guide them to become an excellent people. Theon quickly promised. Just remember what you said today. Leonor smiled and nodded in permission. Chapter 108. The Iron Islands are a place with rich high-quality iron ore and salt mines, but that place is too remote and it is difficult for people who believe in railways to discipline them. Instead of choosing to rule directly, it is better to adopt a policy of restraint, that is, and Greyjoy acts as a gripper to control it indirectly, and then change the soil and return to the flow when the time is right. Under the policy of restraint, a throne was just a false reputation, and Leonor was willing to let it go, so he coaxed Theon Greyjoy to say a lot. He could see that this guy was not a pure bad guy, just a guy who is very eager to get recognition from others, and occasionally he can't tell his own position, which is very promising. After coaxing Theon Greyjoy for a long time, he moved him to tears. Leonor asked him to live in the Red Fort for some time and promised to tell him a marriage and let him marry a beautiful one. Aristocratic woman. Theon Greyjoy cannot say that he has no feelings for his adoptive father Ed Stark. He originally said he wanted to go to Shitang Town to see him, but in front of Leonor's promised throne and noble women, he seemed very moved and finally stayed. Here in Red Fort. Leonor did not draw cakes for Theon Greyjoy. After he settled him, he immediately asked someone to find Pikil and asked him if there were any down-and-out, beautiful and vain nobles in King's Landing. Miss. There are many such ladies, my majesty. Pazier originally thought that Leonor asked him about Margaret's pregnancy, but he didn't expect it to be this. He was a little confused. He felt that Leonor was not yet the queen's mistress, will look for other women as soon as she becomes pregnant. Find one that is suitable for control. Leonor asked Pachel. As appropriate to control. Pachel was a little surprised. This is not what you should ask. Leonor became stern. He asked Sir to work, not asking him to ask why. Yes, my majesty. Pachel quickly adjusted his mind. Have Margaret confirmed. Leonor asked about his queen. The Virgin Mary has given you blessings. Pachel smiled and congratulated. Very good. Thank you for your care and treatment for Shilin over the past few days. I hope she can get better as soon as possible. Margaret will bother you, and calculate the date of the child's birth. Leonor asked expressionlessly. Yes, in the treatment of grayscale disease, I have improved a lot in those children. Your Majesty, believe me. Pachel did not dare to be careless and nodded repeatedly. Of course I believe in you, Mr. Pissier. Leonor changed into a smile and expressed his closeness by the name he was back then, which made Pissier bend his waist lower and his attitude more humble. The demise of the Lannister family shocked Pissier, and the constant contact made Pissier transfer his fear of Tywin Lannister to Leonor, and his fear doubled. Therefore, I dare not neglect at all. Pachel was very faithful in carrying out Leonor's request, and after many screenings for him, he chose a woman named Lena Badmar. This noble girl has beautiful brown hair and brown pupils, fair skin, looks smart, but she is actually very vain. She has seen Theon's pretty good appearance and is sure to marry him and have a chance to become a queen. After receiving the considerable dowry given by Leonor, he decisively chose to agree to get married. Leonor held the wedding of Theon Greyjoy and Lena Badmar at Baelor Cathedral. Sansa Stark and Arya Stark, and many King's Landing nobles watched the wedding and gave gifts to the couple. The wedding was hosted by Leonor himself, and the Archbishop and others had a lot of opinions on this, because Leonor was not a clergyman, and Theon Greyjoy was not a believer in the Seven Gods. As an Iron Islander, Theon grew up in the north and was a believer of the Old God. According to the canon rules of the Seven Gods Church, it is considered enlightened to not cut off Theon's head directly. How could he tolerate his wedding in the Great Hall of Baelor? The Archbishop and the 7 archbishops had a lot of objections and once refused Theon's wedding with this reason, but the newly appointed law minister, Agshi, did not think so. Monk Agshi gave an example. Aegon I was not a devout believer of the 7 gods, and his wife Visenya and Rhaenys were not even a believer of the 7 gods, but the church still blessed the 3 of them for their wedding. Not only gave examples, Monk Agshi also believed that Leonor personally blessed the new people as the representative of the 7 gods, which was an extremely glorious thing, a sign that the 7 gods church was about to prosper, and that the old god and the flooded god were about to be a sign of death. Agshi persuaded the archbishop and the archbishop, and also persuaded Theon Greyjoy to take the oath to convert to the 7 gods in the Cathedral of Baelor. The final wedding was successfully completed with Leonor for Theon Greyjoy and Lena Badmar held a wedding and blessed the 2 on behalf of the 7 gods. It seemed as if the weather was good. On the 2nd day after the wedding, news came from the Iron Islands that Baron Greyjoy, who had become the king of the Iron Islands, fell to death due to a mistake. The Iron Islands are now only left. Theon is an heir. After Leonor got the news, he immediately began to make arrangements, arranging 7 royal guards for Theon Greyjoy, 3 reliable bachelors and housekeepers, and finally 200 fully armed soldiers. Together they sent the ship back to the Iron Islands. Along with Theon Greyjoy, there are sisters Stark, Sansa and Arya, who will take a boat to the north from King's Landing to White Harbor. So, goodbye. Leonor stood at the dock to see the 2 girls farewell. Thank you for your care during this period. Sansa saluted Leonor with the corner of her skirt. I haven't taken care of you. I'm so busy with my business and I haven't seen you a few times, right? Leonor waved his hand and smiled, teasing Arya next to Sansa. Humph. Arya snorted coldly and turned her head away, not talking to Leonor. Alia. Sansa scolded her sister, afraid that Leonor would be angry. Your Majesty, please forgive my sister. Okay, if I get angry, you won't be able to go back to the north. Leonor knew that Sansa had become cautious in King's Landing City, but he didn't expect that it had reached this level now, so he waved his hand casually. Okay, Your Majesty, Arya and I are leaving now. May the gods bless you. Seeing that Leonor didn't care, Sansa breathed a sigh of relief. After saying goodbye, she pulled her sister and wanted to get on boat. Suddenly, Arya broke away from her sister's hand, turned her head and said angrily to Leonor. You wait, I will definitely come back. Yes, I welcome you anytime, as long as you don't come back as an enemy. Leonor waved his hand and joked at the little girl who was angry on the surface, but was actually not good at leaving, and then watched her get on board by her sister Sansara. The sailing ship sailed out of Blackwater Bay and headed north. Chapter 109. The Tao Te Ching says, governing a big country is like cooking small fresh food. Only when the heat comes, the wonderful taste can come out. Rely on the policy of restraining the Iron people of the Iron Islands, attacking the former lords of the western frontier, Stormland and the King's territory, reducing taxes and corvée service, relying on the monopoly of salt and iron to increase the income of the country and the people, constantly accumulating wealth, training the army, and preparing for the last battle with stubborn old forces such as the North Frontier, River Bay and Dornland completely unifies the entire West Eros continent. When the wheat seedlings were drawn out of the land 3 times and the ears were harvested 3 times, Leono's plans produced fruitful fruits. His national vault stored the wealth of up to 1,600,000 golden dragons. He trained 30 regiments, with an army of more than 20,000, including 4 cavalry regiments, and more than half were covered with solid iron armor. Wealth and army are ready, and the next thing we are waiting for is war, using iron and fire to smash the old era, and then remelting a throne. Leonor soon waited for the opportunity, but the first move was not the northern border or other territories he had imagined, but the enemy from the opposite sea. Just as Leonor accumulated wealth and army in West Eros, Daenerys, opposite the sea, was not idle either. The mother of dragons, who possessed a series of titles, hatched the dragon with her petrified dragon eggs according to her fate, and used the dragon to liberate Astabo, Yuankai and Miran in Slave Bay. Daenerys brought 8,000 unscrupulous people under the command of Astabo, freed all slaves in Yuankai, and finally conquered Mir, where he swore to be king under the Pyramid of the Harp, began his own rule, and prepared to return to Westeros with her Dothrak roaring warriors, the unsullied army and the dragon. According to the general process of cool writing, Daenerys should be unstoppable and staged a return of the king, but it is gone. Even without Leonor, Daenerys's own dominance level has reached its peak and can only stagnate in the slave bay, exhausting energy from the slave owner who opposed her. Now with Leonor, her dominance is even worse. Stable. The slave owners who were suppressed by Daenerys kept moving in the slave bay, and the slaves who obeyed Daenerys also retaliated against their past experiences, and both sides kept murdering. Leonor sent spies to Slave Bay to provide weapons to the slave owners' rebels to help them train their troops, and at the same time, they fanned the evil wind and lighted ghost fires among the slaves who had recovered their freedom, telling them that once the slave owners made a comeback, Danielle Silk will abandon them and then go. The slaves who had just obtained freedom were unwilling to be slaves again and tried their best to suppress the former slave owner. The 300 ships Daenerys was prepared to cross the sea were burned in an accident, and his plan to return to Westeros was completely shelved. Even with the help of external forces, he would not be able to cross the sea again in the next 3 years. Daenerys was extremely angry at this, but she had no choice but to lock her dragon under the pyramid, execute the slaves who were causing trouble, and then try to seek a way to govern the country. When Daenerys was tripped in the slave bay, another descendant of Targaryen who was stranded in Essos hung his flag and crossed the narrow sea to start the war. The war began quietly. The crows flew from the east to the White Sword Tower in King's Landing City in the early morning. After seeing the red ink mud on the crows, the servants in charge of raising crows did not dare to neglect them and immediately sent the letter. Enter the White Sword Tower. After many transmissions, the letter was finally delivered to the great knight Balistan, and then presented to Leonor by Balistan. Leonor was enjoying breakfast. He was eating boiled eggs and a different version of hula soup made of pepper, meat and wheat flour. He was stunned when he heard Balistan's report, "Army." "Yes, Your Majesty." The intelligence sent by the 70th Royal Forest Regiment indicated that an unknown army appeared in the Stormland, had occupied the Vulture Nest City, and headed towards the Crow Nest City and the Stone Helmet City, as if they wanted to cut off us from the rainforest. The connection. Can you figure out who that is? Leonor fell into deep thought. Could it be that Daenerys crossed the sea without any effort and landed directly on the storm ground? There is no news on this at present. I suggest mobilizing the Royal Corps and the Storm Corps to prepare for battle. Balistan made a suggestion. Of course this is the case. The Royal Forest and Storm Corps are under your own command to find out the identity and strength of the enemy as soon as possible. At the same time, send a crow to Donner, so that he can organize the noble knights of the storm leaders to gather and prepare for war. Liano nodded, demanding to find out the enemy situation as soon as possible, and made certain of the generals of the Imperial Corps and the Storm Corps. Yes. Chief Bari Stanton ordered. Liano trained new army, with regiments as the basic unit. The number of people in each regiment is floating around 650 people. It is subject to training organizations for each commander without orders. Non-war period, no mobilization shall be carried out without authorization. Assessment drills are carried out annually and quarterly. At the time of temporary transfer and distribution to the group, the commander shall be appointed temporarily. Currently, Liano has 30 regiments. In addition to the 3 Iron Guard regiments responsible for the defense of Junlin City, 10 Red Water regiments are stationed in Hungchar River to prevent the princes from heading south from the northern border. 5 Imperial Bridal regiments are stationed in the Imperial Palace. Lin Jeshong supports and protects Junlin City from being threatened by surprise. 7 Sword regiments are stationed in various parts of the western region, and 5 Storm regiments are stationed in Fengzi Fort, with the goal of being ready to suppress the lords of the western region and Stormland at any time. Out of caution in his heart, in order to prevent Daenerys Dragon's attack from a fierce attack, Leonor mobilized the Royal Guard and the Storm Corps at one time and handed over the command to Balistan in order to make sure to figure it out as soon as possible. The enemy's identity is exterminated. When Balistan took the order and left, Leonor still felt unsafe, so he turned his head and said to Brienne, "Go and have someone open my number 10 cage." "Yes." Brienne winked at the guard next to her. The guard immediately took the order and hurriedly left the King's Hall and turned into a remote tower. The remote tower has a huge space, with wire cages inside, with large and small eagles, big dogs and cats, and special servants to take care of them. With the order from the guard's servant opened a cage with the number 10, let the chirping tits fly out, wandered in the sky for 2 circles, and then flew out in the direction of the royal forest in the sea wind. Grey-white tits can be seen everywhere. They travel through the forest and fly in the sea breeze. Finally, they stop on the castle in a red reef on the coast. Looking at a tent in the ruins, their little heads shaking, and their eyes are invisible. Light. Leonor's consciousness descended into the tit's body. Looking through the tit's eyes, he saw a castle full of tents in various colors appearing in front of him. Vulture Nest Fort. Leonor recognized this castle at a glance, belonging to the Stormland Castle of the Clinton family. Its former owner belonged to John Clinton, the last prince of Targaryen family, and the king of Crazy King Aerys II. Hand. Chapter 110. As Targaryen's direct lineage, even the nobles of the Stormland, the Clinton family lost their political qualities. After Robert took office, he distributed most of Clinton's land to other knights, allowing them to retain only one castle. They gradually became obscured by everyone. Leonor didn't care much about the past of the Vulture Crown City. He was more concerned about where the current group of troops stationed in Vulture Crown Castle came from, so he just took a look at the castle, and after a brief discernment, he controlled the tits to spread his wings. Flew over the top of the castle, intending to look for some signs in the middle of the tent to confirm the identity of the group of people, but he found nothing and he did not find any signs. The tits hovered in the air, no identity patterns were found, and some pedestrians in the middle of the tent below were not unique. They wore different styles of armor, except for their fierce aura and slightly rigorous battalion area, where the archers and infantry did not disturb each other. No other features were found. Really, I don't talk about the rules at all. Leonor manipulated the tits around, complaining about the incongruence of the army, approaching the castle of the Red Reef, trying to listen to people's conversation, but not yet approaching. He heard the eagle cry. A layer of shadow pounced down in the sky. Before Leonor could react, he felt his soul fall out of the tit's body. When he looked up, he saw a feathered eagle flying with his back to him. "Go out," and the tit that he possessed was falling into its right claw. Leonor looked at the eagle without any surprise or joy, and saw that there was a copper hoop tied to its claws. Just as he turned his consciousness, the eagle loosened the tit in its claws and turned his head to look at him. "Come over." The sharp eagle eyes were straight and a figure reflected inside, with purple eyes and white hair, and plump and beautiful lips, getting closer and closer, becoming clearer, as if a human was loaded in the body of an eagle. "This is the one who changes shape." When Leonor was slightly surprised, the eagle had already pounced in front of him, and then he subconsciously raised his hand and slapped it away. You dare to mess with me, too. Leonore slapped the eagle from the air, and also slapped the consciousness attached to its body. Di-di-di. Before the goshawk landed from the sky, the sharp copper whistle came from below, which surprised Leonore slightly. The changeable man was fine. Can't stay for a long time. Leonore glanced at the many figures gathered below, and did not dare to stay for a long time. His soul dissipated directly and returned to the body in Junlin City. Who is it? There are even those who change shapes follow. Leonore opened his eyes and became curious about the team in the Vulture Kun City. A team with those who change shapes follow is definitely not simple. Purple eyes and white hair, this is the typical Valyrian look. Go, let someone find Varys for me, and call Vincent over. Leonore looked up and asked Brienne beside him. Yes. After the guards sent by Brienne left, Leonore thought for a long time and had no idea until Vincent came. Your Majesty. Vincent bowed to Leonore. There are troops of unknown origins in the Stormland. Now they are stationed in the Vulture Kun City. Send your spy to touch the details. Leonore asked directly. Yes. Vincent didn't dare to neglect and immediately wanted to make arrangements. When Vincent, who was going to arrange the staff, came back, Leonore did not wait for Varys and sent a second group of personnel to find it, but still couldn't find the fat man. What is that guy doing recently? Leonore had a bad idea in his mind and asked Vincent about Varys' recent moves. The last time he appeared was in a brothel in King's Landing 3 days ago. Recently, he has frequently written letters to Pantos, and the content of the letter is unknown. Vincent has been monitoring Varys' situation. Let your spy find him and kill him directly after finding him. Leonore was sure that Varys disappeared at this time, and it is highly likely that he had betrayed the strange army, and it is very likely that it was Dan. Nerys's subordinate. The person who makes the shape change has some feminine colors, but is not a female. It should not be Daenerys herself. Daenerys herself is a dragon master. I have never heard of it as a shape changer, but the play does not say that she has the shape changer. Those are the subordinates. I didn't expect that guy was so impatient. Was he a broken jar after he felt powerless to rule Slave Bay? But the messenger I sent to Slave Bay did not report that she had signs of crossing the sea. Leonore turned many thoughts in his mind and said to Vincent. Send a raven to your messenger in Slave Bay, and ask him to give feedback on the situation there, and also pay attention to the major ports of Essos to see if there are large-scale ship mobilizations in the near future, and who is the one who is taking the boat. Your Majesty, it takes time. Do your best. Leonore sighed. The speed of information transmission in this era is very low, and the crow trained by his bachelor is difficult to connect the two continents. Many information is lagging behind. Perhaps the opposite is really Danielle Silk is not sure. If it was Daenerys, I would have to find a way to face the dragon. Go to hold a meeting of the Imperial Court, but before the formal meeting begins, let Lord Messay and His Highness Oberon come to me. Leonore asked Vincent to make arrangements, and then asked Brienne to prepare for the meeting. A moment later, Mesteriel and Oberon Martell came to the King's Hall to meet Leonore. Both of them were quite surprised to hear that an army was landing in the storm and had seized the Vulture's Nest City. Any situation of the enemy is unknown at present, but I have ordered that Barristan lead the Royal Guard and the Storm Corps to prepare for battle, and you must be prepared. Leonore did not tell the opposite side that it might be Daenerys. The news told the two that they would only prepare them. Please rest assured, Your Majesty. No matter what his heart was thinking, Messay and Oberon always spoke in unison to ask him to rest assured. I will be even more worried if I hear you reassure me. Leonore complained in his heart, then pondered for a moment, and said to Mess. Speaking of this, Margaret is pregnant, Lord Mays, if she gave birth to a boy this time, then she will be my future heir. This news will not be announced for the time being. You know, Your Highness Oberon testified. Well. Ha, of course, of course. When Mess heard this, his face was stunned at first. He subconsciously wanted to ask something, and almost laughed out loud. In order to cover up, he could only nod. When the Tyrier family was in the wedding of the heroes of Kian City, they wanted to get a promise by offering gifts to Dragonstone Island, but they were fooled by Leonore. Now they have got what they want, how could he not laugh? Oberon glanced at Mess, who was smiling like a fool, and then looked at Leonore, who had no expression on his face, and moved his lips slightly, but said nothing, because Namelia was also pregnant not long ago. If there is nothing else, then we will go to the Prime Minister's tower to attend the meeting now. After Leonor communicated with the two in advance, he asked the two to attend the imperial meeting of the Prime Minister's tower with himself. Chapter 111. After Leonor made peace, he announced the news that an enemy had landed from the storm at the temporary imperial meeting held by the Prime Minister's tower, which aroused the surprise of many ministers and whispered. Silent! Brienne pressed her sword and shouted, shaking the noisy sound in the Prime Minister's tower, making everyone's eyes turn to Leonor on the throne, waiting for the black-haired, blue-eyed, golden crown covered with the top of the black-haired, blue-eyed, golden crown. The king gives orders. Dorite! Leonor said a cry without expression, and Dorite, who was sitting in the last place, quickly stood up and left. From today on, Junlin City will impose a curfew to strictly investigate all people entering and leaving the city to prevent spies from getting into the city. Yes. Dorite quickly responded. Defos. Leonor called out Defos from the next head and told the King's Landing General, you come to manage the situation in the city, appease the people, and do a good job in logistics. Yes. Uxie, you can cooperate with Davos and let the monks take action. Yes. As ministers were called out one by one, assigned tasks and prepared for a battle, Leonor ended the imperial meeting. On the night after the imperial meeting ended, Ballaston's subordinate, Bor, arrived and he brought back the latest news from the Imperial Guards. Ballaston organized 5 regiments of the Imperial Guards to launch a tentative attack on the enemies of the Vulture Crown Fort, captured some enemies, and found out some news through the communication of the envoys. These enemies did come from the opposite side of the narrow sea, and they were from departing from the port of Rees. It is a mercenary belonging to the Golden Group. Does the Golden Group that speaks like gold? Who do they serve? Leonor nodded slightly. He had seen those people from the perspective of Tits. They were casual but had a certain discipline. They were indeed the style of mercenaries, but they were affected by who should I hire? I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Bor, wearing white armor, looked ashamed. The mercenaries they captured were too low, and they did not find out who the employer of the Golden Group was during the negotiations. It seems that it has been strictly confidential. If that is the case, then I will destroy these invaders and crush them under our horses' hooves. No matter what they plan, there is no meaning. Leonor Bor told Ballaston, but at the end he was afraid that he would urge Ballaston to advance and rush, so he said, as long as he can eliminate those invaders, don't be restricted by other things, including my urging, and follow your own pace. I trust you unconditionally. Yes. Bor lay down his head low after hearing Leonor's words. Go. I'm waiting for your good news, and I hope you will be successful and be promoted to the Royal Guard as soon as possible. Leonor stepped forward and helped Bor up in person. In the name of the 7 gods, Your Majesty, I will take down the enemy's head and not let any invaders go. The prepared Royal Guard Bor promised read. I believe in you, go in the name of the 7 gods. Leonor patted Bor on the shoulder. With the encouragement of the king, Bor pounded his chest hard, then quickly left, riding a fast horse to bring the news of the king to Ballaston on the side of the imperial forest. Leonor stood at the height of the Red Fort, looking at the white cavalry swept out of the city under the setting sun, and couldn't help feeling a little melancholy. He raised his head to look at the lonely moon in the sky, his thoughts were a little swaying. The royal inner must have played very well. It's a pity that I can no longer lead the army to the war like before. The current situation in Junlin City is very complicated. He must be here and can only be in charge here. If he wasn't here, he would have a big surprise for him without pointing out the Duriel family. Just as Leonor felt melancholy and lonely, the sound of footsteps came, and Brienne came over to report. Your Majesty, the crows from the Iron Islands are back. Is it Alvin's letter? Leonor turned his head and asked. Yes, but that Theon also wrote you a letter and brought it over together. Brienne nodded and moved aside. A waiter lowered his head and delivered 2 rolls of lacquered sheep paper. Please. Leonor took the parchment scroll and waited for the servant to leave with a flattering smile. He removed the paint seal of the parchment scroll in his hand and spread it out, reading the contents inside. One of the 2 pampered rolls is from Theon, and the other is from Alvin, the guard who escorted him back to the Iron Islands. The content of the letter is similar, and they are all about the experience after Theon returned to the Iron Islands, but the perspective is slightly more focused. Different. In the letter, Alvin complained that Theon was arrogant, and he also liked women very much. After returning to the Iron Islands, he started looking for women and completely forgot that his wife Lena, who stayed in King's Landing, had a very good personality. Not to be liked by the Iron Island nobles, his two uncles were preparing to convene a meeting to overthrow him, while his sister often played with him. Compared to Alvin's disdain, Theon's words were much more earnest. He explained to Leonor his difficulties in the Iron Islands. He had no money or food, and could not convince the public at all. His uncle Victorian, Aaron, is plotting to overthrow him, and his sister also uses means to play with him, and he feels lonely. What a fool! Leonor looked at Theon's complaining letter and couldn't help but shake his head in his heart, and raised his hand to Brienne. The female guard immediately understood and turned around and went to the house to prepare paper and pen. When Leonor entered the house, the paper and pen on the table were ready, and Brienne moved the butter candle from the corner. With the butter candle, Leonor wrote a reply to Theon, telling him not to be discouraged. It is normal to feel lonely as a king, because there is always only one throne of power, but he must learn to find allies for himself. Your sister Asha often plays with you, but she has not publicly opposed you. This is a very suitable potential ally. Send your olive branch to her. If she dislikes you for being weak, you should be strong in time and she had a heart-to-heart talk, making her feel that you were her relative, and at the same time, she wanted to let her see your value, promise her you would give her a ship, an army, or something else, and she would promise whatever she liked. For your uncles, instead of letting them conspire secretly, you should pick up this pustule yourself and hold a meeting of kings to choose. Please rest assured, I am your solid backing. I will send someone to transport you food and treasures, and some armies. Please believe me, you will use these armies. In the King's Choice Conference, those who do not obey you appear together, destroy them with force, and tell them with steel and blood who is the king of the Iron Islands. Leonor wrote a letter to Theon with all his feelings. He did not reveal his contempt in the letter at all, but only taught Theon how to weave a conspiracy. After writing this letter, he wrote another letter to Alvin and told the other party. He will send more personnel to ask him to secretly respond, and check the personnel in advance, so as not to leak information. No matter what Theon Greyjoy plans, he plans to stew away the people of the Greyjoy family at the King's Choice Conference. Dealing with the matter of the Iron Islands is also one of the meanings of him staying in King's Landing. Some victory depends on swords and spears, while others rely on paper and pen and crows. Chapter 112. The gloomy sky was cloudless and clear. On the mountains covered with weeds, 44 curved grey-white ribs stood in the sky. Among these big trees that were over 100 years thick and taller than the masts of ships, many iron people from large islands gathered together. Today they were choosing. The king came. When all the iron people with status gather, the King Selection Association officially begins. This King Selection Association consists of the priest of the God of Desolation, the younger brother of the dead King Baron Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, Ellen Greyjoy of King Baron Greyjoy of the dead King of the Iron Islands. I hosted. The priest of the God inserted his scimitar with his thick beard and hair covered with seaweed, stood in the middle of Naga's ribs, and gave his comments to everyone, and then began the formal election activities of the King of the Iron Islands. In name, everyone can participate. Everyone can lead 3 assistants to the stage and impress everyone with gifts and speeches. As long as most people on the scene shout out the name of a candidate, that person will be elected. The King Selection Conference will end here. There are not many people participating in the Iron Islands election today, but only Victory Greyjoy, Asha Greyjoy, and Theon Greyjoy's family are the main competitor. Victalion and his 3 assistants brought waterfall like gold, silver, and gems, which gave him a lot of supporters. Asha Greyjoy could not compete with her uncle, she did not have enough the gift, so he gave an enthusiastic speech on the spot, and also won a lot of cheers. The last one to come on stage was Theon Greyjoy, who, as Ed Stark's adopted son, brought boxes of grain, salt, and Jinlong delivered a speech that was not inferior to his sister Asha, such as the dead are not dead and the brave are fearless. Unfortunately, as believers of the God, the Iron people reacted few times. What a beautiful speech! Victalion leaned on a battle axe and teased his brother Ellen, causing the wet hair, who had always been serious, to curl the corners of his mouth. In the crowd, Asha couldn't help but cover her forehead when she saw her brother's performance. This guy regarded the Iron Men as the knights on the mainland. The Iron Min Mo walks the railway and was not indifferent to the Knight Min interest. On the platform, Theon Greyjoy's face turned red. He looked at the Iron people below who were as if he was looking at a clown, and his heart was very murderous. Just as he was about to send a signal to the crowd, a sound suddenly came from afar. A violent muffled sound. Wow! The red horns with gold made a dull sound. The iron-minded people who were already bored watching the show turned around and saw a team of hundreds of people coming over. The first man in this team with a bird embroidered on his chest was naked, holding a curved horn with golden dark red horns, and the blue veins on his forehead were blowing hard. In the middle of the team behind him, a man with pale skin, blue lips and a blindfolded left eye strode to lead the team. When the long line drove into the middle of Naga's ribs, a famous servant opened the box in his hand, revealing a full amount of gold treasures. The one-eyed man raised his hand, and the naked man immediately stopped the horn in his hand. He fell down with exhausted look, but the horn he blew was enough to shock all the iron people. I am Euron Greyjoy. The man with one-eyed and blue lips introduced himself to all the iron people regardless of the fallen servants, nor did he care about the changing faces of Victalion and Erlin in the crowd. You should know me, from Ibn to Yaxia, no matter who you are, you will pray when you see my sail. Euron Greyjoy's blue one-eyed chuckled at all the iron people, but no one dared to do so respond to his gaze. Euron, you are not qualified to participate in the king's election conference. Victalion raised the axe in his hand and scolded him angrily despite Iron's dissuasion. Of course I have it, my brother, don't look at me like this. Isn't it just that you slept with a salt concubine? I will give you 10 more, and you, don't you want everyone to have 10 beautiful salts? Is it a concubine? Yulun pointed at the iron people at the scene to bewitch him. Why do you give each of us 10 salt concubines? Some iron-minded people disdained. By the dragon, you know me, everyone knows that I slept with my brother's salt concubine, and was expelled from the Iron Islands by my brother Baron. Over the years, my ships have sailed far and arrived in many of you unexpectedly. Look, this is what I found in the ominous ruins of Valilia. Euron stretched out his hand, and a servant handed the dark red trumpet from the exhausted hand to his hand, allowing him to show it to the iron people. There are gold slings on the dark red curved horns that are wandering with countless veins, and are carved with irrecognizable ancient words. This is the horn of the dragon, the horn used by the ancient Valyrians to control the dragon. When I blow this horn, the dragon will crawl at my feet. At that time, the whole Westeros will be mine. I will give each of you 10 salt concubines, so that you can enjoy the robbery of every piece of land you see and play with every beautiful woman. Yulun's words were vulgar, but they were called the iron of the scene. The people's breathing worsened. There are no dragons in the world. Victalion said. The dragon has appeared, the descendant of that Targaryen. She has hatched a new dragon, and it is 3, how about it? You all, look, this is my proof to you, this is my gift, follow me, 10 salt concubines, the whole land belongs to us. Euron loudly announced Daenerys's existence to everyone, and at the same time held up the horn of the dragon, pointing at the gold, silver and jewelry he brought, loudly bewitched. Euron. Some shaman shouted out his name. Euron. Yulun. The voices of the iron people gathered together. It was also Jinzi. They were more willing to surrender to Yulun, who owned the dragon. At least they had the chance to conquer the entire continent. Believe me, you will not be disappointed in your choice, my son. Euron heard his name shouting out from everyone's mouth. His blue lips were so excited that they were tense, but halfway through his words, he choked and looked down and saw a feather arrow shot through his chest. Kill them, especially Victalion, Elon, Asha, and that Euron. Alvin, wearing white armor, held a big bow in his hand. His voice was cold, and he was by his side, about 100 times. The guards took off their disguise and raised their crossbows in their hands to shoot at the crowd indiscriminately. Sir, His Highness Theon is still there. Some soldiers hesitated a little, and Theon, whom they supported, was still inside. Don't worry about him. Alvin gave a decisive order, and another 30 or 40 armored infantry next to him began to run up with their swords and axes, and began to slash and kill the iron people trying to escape. Blood flowed. Among the chaotic iron people, Theon saw Alvin in white in the distance and wanted to shout I'm still here, but a feather arrow penetrated directly into his chest and shot him to death. Among the iron people, let him die with the iron people present. No one was elected today in the king election meeting. Chapter 113. A shining light flashed by, accurately slashing on the roof of the Red Fort, bringing a burst of fire and lightning to fade away. The thunder sounded afterwards, and rumbling spread from the entire top of Junlin City. Really? Leonor listened to the thunder above his head, and couldn't help but reach out and rub his forehead, firmly squeezing the thunder in his body caused by the throbbing of souls. There are two aspects of his terror. On the one hand, he was shocked by the lightning above his head, and on the other hand, he was... Wow! A crisp and loud cry came from the courtyard next door, which made Leonor feel relieved, and he quickly stood up and walked towards the next door. As Leonor stepped into the courtyard gate, he walked out with a swaddled nun, Lolly, and Pikil. "How is Margaret?" Leonor glanced at the child in Lally's arms, with a smile on his face, and at the same time cared about Margaret in the room to Pikil. This was her second place in her. She and her first child are daughter Vivian. "His Highness is healthy." Pikil replied to Leonor's condition. "Very good." Leonor took the child from the nun's arms, hugged him and coaxed him a few words, and at the same time he opened the corner of the swaddling cloth and took a look. He felt a little relieved and disappointed. This was still a daughter. According to his agreement with Metz, he does not need to make this daughter the crown prince. Just call her Arya. Leonor named his second daughter, and then he was about to enter the door to visit Margaret, but before he could enter the door, he heard a call. "Your Majesty." The waiter wearing a feathered wide-brimmed hat hurriedly, holding a roll of parchment sealed from red paint in his hand. The crow from the Iron Islands sent back the message. "Let it go first." Leonor ignored the news, but went in first and visited Margaret, who had just given birth. The room was filled with a smell of fishy smell. Margaret, who had just given birth, was lying on the bed very weakly. After discovering that Leonor came in with the child in, she sat up with her hands. "Your Majesty, show it to me. Let's take a look at our area." Leonor sent his newborn daughter to Margaret. "She is such a good child. Your Majesty, do you think she will be a good queen in the future?" Marguerite the child and tentatively posed to Leonor. Leonor had a little pity for Margaret, but when he heard her words, the smile on his face faded. "Won't." The sudden stiff tone made Margaret, who was holding the child, stutter slightly. "I will not allow my kingdom to repeat the farce of the blood dragon dance, so I will not allow girls to inherit the throne. I have said this before. I have something to say to your father first, and the boy you gave birth to can only continue crown prince." Leonor explained slowly, and he spoke very openly because he and Margaret were already very close couples. "I know." Margaret lowered her head, her face unable to see the joy and anger. "Rest with peace of mind. Master Pikil said that you are in good health." Leonor comforted Margaret. She still had a chance to have a child. "Of course, Your Majesty, I will recover as soon as possible." Margaret raised her head again, with a smile on her face. "Don't force yourself like this. Put your body first. I like it, both men and women." Leonor saw the displeasure under Margaret's smile and advised her not to be too anxious. "Why can't Your Majesty accept a female heir?" Margaret finally couldn't hold back. The blood dragon dance was just because Viserai did not directly establish the crown prince, and gave the Green Party and Aegon II a chance. "You can convene parliament and nobles and establish it early. If I establish a woman as the heir, then who should she enthrone as the crown prince when she dies? Her child or her nephew?" Leonor interrupted Margaret's idea and asked her a question. "Why is this kind of problem?" Margaret felt it was unreasonable. Of course it is the legal child of her and her husband. If there is a legal child, the legal child must have the right to inherit it. No, her nephew will not agree. As a male bloodline, he will think that he is ahead of his inheritance rights, and the nobles with ulterior motives will definitely support him. Leonor shook his head. He wanted to kill all power disputes. Women will not be established as crown prince unless they are absolutely necessary. "Why are you doing this?" Marguerite the child, his face turned pale with anger. "Okay, no need to say anything. Don't argue with me for any reason unless you ascend the throne." Leonor developed his due decisiveness and did not allow the quarrel to escalate here, which would not help his relationship with Margaret. It's not conducive to her rest. Margaret saw that Leonor had made up his mind and could not argue with him, but could not let him down, so he also asked a question. "If Namelia gave birth to a boy, what are you going to do if she was going to do it?" The reason why Margaret wanted her daughter to become the crown prince was mainly because Namelia's pregnancy gave her a crisis. "You are the queen, and the crown prince can only be the queen's child." Leonor gave Margaret the answer he wanted. "Okay, I understand, Your Majesty." Margaret was relieved after hearing Leonor's words. "So, take good care of your health. Leonor promised and advised Margaret to take good care of her health. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Margaret thanked Leonor, feeling that her previous attitude was too anxious. "I am your husband." Leonor reached out and patted Margaret on the cheek. "Of course." Margaret reached out to cover Leonor's palm, feeling the temperature above, and was a little lost for a moment. After a while of warmth, Leonor waited until Margaret fell asleep before leaving the courtyard, and got the crow from the Iron Islands from the servant. After seeing the contents clearly with a candlelight, he couldn't help but smile. "Go and have someone invite Our Highness Lena to meet." Leonor asked the servant to invite Theon's wife Lena Badmar for him. A moment later, Leonor met Theon's legal wife, Lena Badmar, in the king's hall, and informed her with sadness about Theon's death. How could this happen? The beautiful Lena was surprised when she heard the news of her husband's death. She tried to make a sad expression, but because she was too surprised, she couldn't do it at all. This is the custom of the Iron Islands. The Greyjoy family had a fierce internal strife at the king's selection conference. Now the Iron Islands have lost their king. "My Highness." Leonor told Lena about the situation. "Zion shouldn't be the only legal king of the Iron Islands." Lena was still puzzled. "No, the situation is very complicated, let's take a look first. You have two choices." Leonor didn't want to explain the complex power struggle for Lena. "What choice, My Majesty? I don't understand what you said." Lena was very panicked. "About the Iron Islands, you have two choices, one is that you are directly crowned as Queen of the Iron Islands, and the other is that you and Theon's children ascend to the throne." Leonor asked Lena to make the choice. "I don't have a child who is pregnant with Theon." Lena was very panicked. "You can have it as long as you need it." Leonor looked expressionless. "I chose to be the queen myself. My Majesty, please help me with all my strength." Lena suddenly became enlightened. She understood what Leonor wanted. Instead of letting the false child bear it, she might as well make it herself. "A queen. I will do my best to help you, Your Majesty Lena." Seeing that Lena was enlightened, Leonor was very satisfied and changed his name. Chapter 114. Everything about the Iron Islands has settled, the blood of the Greyjoy family is extinct, and Leonor will detain the remaining Ironmen in the name of Lena I, which is easy for him. Compared to the raising of hands on the western seas, the war in the east is not so smooth. Leonor gave Balistan the largest force, and Balistan did not let him down and used 10 regiments to block the Golden Group that crossed the sea in the Vulture Nest Fort, but it would be very important to further eliminate it. It's difficult. This difficulty lies not only in the tenacious resistance of the Golden Group, but also in the uncooperation of the princes in the storm. At the beginning of the attack on the Golden Core, Leonor ordered the princes of Stormland to send troops to cooperate. This was the obligation and responsibility of the leaders of Stormland, but there were few responders. Most of the princes looked for various people who wanted to harvest millet and farm. Reasons to refuse to fulfill this obligation. In addition to the Searme family in the Harvest Hall, the other nobles in the Stormland not only refused to fulfill their obligations, but also raised the food prices openly and secretly, greatly increasing the difficulty and cost of Leonor's food and arms supply. Fortunately, Davos was Leonor solved the problem. With his super high connections, the Onion Knight brought a helping hand to Leonora in the Narrow Sea. The pirates led by Saraduzan used ships to supply food to the army of Balistan and cooperated with the King's Landing fleet. The Golden Regiment's troop transport ship was blocked. "Your Majesty, there are rumors everywhere outside now." Davos sat at the table with a map, carefully accompanying Leonor who was playing with the model of the ship. "What rumors?" Leonor played with the ship model in his hand and replied absent-mindedly. He was thinking about how to quickly annihilate the Golden Group mercenaries in the Vulture Nest Fort, and whether to use his soul to fight again. "It is rumored outside that the Golden Group serves His Highness Stannis." Davos whispered. "Don't doubt, the Golden Group cannot surrender to Stannis. Speaking of which, you really don't know where he escaped." Leonor missed his brother a little. Although that guy had a bad temper, he is indeed an expert in naval warfare, and the key is that most of the fleets of Wangling and Stormland were taken away by him, and he didn't know where to take them. "I really don't know." Davos's answer was firm. "Forget it, I won't force you. I can't be sure who the Golden Group serves, but it's definitely not Stannis. That should be the remnant of Targaryen, but I can't be sure if it's Daenerys. I'm a little unsure if it's Daenerys. I can't say no, okay, because Varys ran away, the time for the fat man to escape was too coincidental. Leonor told his guest to Davos. Apart from Daenerys and Viserys, are there any other blood seeds in Targaryen? Davos was also a little curious. Yes. Leonor nodded affirmatively. Jon Snow of the Stark family, that is Rhaega's child, Rhaega, and Lyanna's child. Who? Davos showed a slightly surprised expression. There were other bloodlines in the Targaryen family. Targaryen's bloodline back then, Mad King Aerys II had 3 children, the eldest was Rhaega, the second son was Viserys, and the youngest was Daenerys. In addition, they were the 2 of Rhaega and Ilya. A child, Rhaeneth and Aegon, who were ordered to be killed in the cradle by Tywin Lannister, and one of his illegitimate children. Leonor counted Targaryen's last descendants with his fingers. Rhaega and his illegitimate child. Davos was so surprised that Rhaega Targaryen, who died at the hands of Robert on the Trident River, had always been famous before the abducting of Lyanna Stark, but he didn't expect to stay. Is it that I left behind with Lyanna? When Davos heard Leonor's calendar, his gossip and thoughts were gone, and he suddenly had a locked object. Actually, if it is a far branch, the Golden Group itself should be considered Targaryen's bloodline. Leonor ignored Davos' gossip, but returned his gaze to the Golden Group. The Targaryen family was one of the 40 Dragon Kings in the ancient fortress of Valyrian. It used blood and fire to be of the same origin as the family motto, and the 3-headed fire-breathing dragons with black background and red patterns as the family emblem. It initiated the conquest since Aegon I the War began and ruled the entire Westeros for more than 280 years. During this nearly 300 years, the Targaryen family has also reproduced many branches, most of which were eliminated in the cruel power struggle, but there are still 1 or 2 remnants, such as the Golden Group's Ig Huan. The Golden Group is a mercenary group established by Ig Huan, an illegitimate son of Targaryen's illegitimate son. He was the illegitimate son of Aegon IV, the illegitimate son of Targaryen's 11th king, because he supported another illegitimate son brother, Haihuo, to launch a rebellion. Defeated, he took a large number of knights and nobles to leave Essos, established a mercenary group to survive, dreaming of returning to Westeros one day. The current leader of the Golden Group, Harry Strickland, himself does not have Targaryen's bloodline, but it is difficult to guarantee that he has other Targaryen's bloodlines in his hand. Your Majesty. Davos said softly. I'm listening. Leonor shook his head, threw away his distractions, looked at Davos, waiting for his words. Instead of guessing the Golden Group's service members like this, it's better to destroy them directly. Davos made a suggestion. Well said, the question is how to eliminate it. Leonor curled the corner of his mouth. He didn't want to destroy the Golden Group. He felt uncomfortable with such a force to stay close to him, especially now that the nobles in the storm have caused all the storms. Waiting and watching. I heard that your siege in Kian City is very exciting. Davos lowered his head. The main problem of attacking the Golden Governor now is the defense of the Vulture Kun city. It is difficult for Ballaston's armies to break through that city. But no matter how strong that city is, it should not be as strong as Kian City. Haha, do you think I don't want to copy that time? Leonor sighed at Davos. There was a prerequisite for breaking the city that time, and he was not a real god. I don't know much. Davos sincerely said that he didn't know the king's difficulties. Forget it, it's not your fault. I think this is the only way to go now. This matter cannot be delayed. Leonor waved his hand, but made up his mind that this matter could not be delayed anymore. The Iron Islands, the dust has settled, so I want to go and see what the Golden Group is. Your Majesty, you. Davos raised his head in surprise. I want to lead the army in person. Do you want to stay in King's Landing? Leonor asked Davos. Your Majesty, you are willing to let me come. Davos was a little angry and was very panicked. You should know that guarding the rear was an extremely important thing. He was once a vassal of Stannis. Don't. Leonor raised his voice. No, Your Majesty, I said, you are my god, the only god. Davos stood up and knelt down directly at Leonor. He was a civilian who grew up in a flea nest, and before that he had having served Stannis, Leonor had given him his back without reservation. This was trust in him, and he must repay this trust. Okay, I feel your piety. Leonor smiled, reached out to help Davos up, and patted him on the shoulder. He was a person who was employed without doubt, no doubt about him. Davos' character it is no less than Ed, and it has managed Junlin City very well, available and useful. Chapter 115. Entrusted his back to Davos intact, Leonor took 3 regiments on duty in King's Landing, allowing Oberon and Metz to be their right-handed hands, and Vincent and others as their followers, and began to storm the next day. The land of the Vulture Nest City is heading forth. Before Leonor marched along the road, he sent messengers to the princes in the storm, asking them to respond along the way and prepare their troops to attack Jikao City for themselves. He gave the princes of the Stormland a chance, but the princes of the Stormland did not cherish it. When Leonor arrived at Tongmen City with nearly 2,000 people from 3 regiments, he was directly rejected by the Buckles family. The knights guarding the city prohibited his army from entering the city, and even directly cursed on the walls. The king who eats shit, the army who eats shit, don't want to enter the land of the Buckles family. You are not welcome here, just go and eat rice somewhere else. This foul language was fed back by soldiers to the central army where Leonor was located, causing a fierce reaction. Your Majesty, kill in and pull out all their tongues. Metz was wearing rose-red golden armor and green gold-edged ribbons. He was so angry that his face turned red when he was told by the Buckles family, as if he had received it. Insulted, shouting loudly to enter the city to take revenge. Let all troops continue to march towards the direction of the Vulture Kun city. Leonor gave the order with a blue face. Your Majesty, let it go. Metz couldn't believe it. It's obvious that the Buckles family is intentionally dragging us here. What makes them have the courage to do this? Ober ethically analyzed the status quo and told Metz why he did this. No matter what gives them courage, they will never let us march at the Vulture Kun city like this. Your Highness, you will take the 30 Regiment to protect our retreat so that Lord Metz and I can successfully arrive at the Vulture Kun city. Leonor arranged for Oberon to lead half of his army to guard the rear. He wanted to see if the Buckler family in Tongmen could still be so rampant when he broke the Vulture Nest City. Okay. Oberon responded. Father, thank you for your maintenance. Don't worry, I will definitely make the Buckles family pay the price when they break through the Vulture Nest City. Leonor did not forget to appease Metz. Of course, of course. Metz heard Leonor's father and smirked, not saying anything against him. Oberon next to him looked at Leonor, then looked at Metz who was just smirking, not knowing what to say for a moment. This father-in-law and son-in-law, one doesn't know what the shame is, the other is a completely fool, and he is also a fool who is very easy to coax. Without further ado, after assigning the mission, Oberon personally led his team to stay, while Leonor and Metz rushed to the city of Vultures with 2 regiments. After a night of rushing, Leonor arrived at the Red Coral Coast near the Vulture Nest City at noon the next day. When he arrived in the army, Balistan was not here. The left-behind Barry Dondiryan reported that the knights had led the army to provoke the enemy. I went to play the knights and went to fight alone, and the old man is really tough. Leonor sighed. Balistan was also an honest man. If it were him, he would have sieged the city, surrendered, attacked with all kinds of tricks. In short, he would not play such a fight, and he would have to fight alone. This would be a breath of the enemy. Opportunity. Next time, Balistan cannot be allowed to command the army again. His thinking is still the same as the noble's conservative style, which is not suitable for the new war situation at all. Let's go. Let's go and have a look. Leonor Nobilistan had no choice but to take his army to the city of Vulture. When Leonor came to the Red Eagle Nest City, which was like Red Fort, he was ready for a full-scale war. Huge ditches were dug under the city walls, and wooden stakes were inserted diagonally on the ground. Reject horses. Although the scene was very grand, the soldiers on both sides were watching the show at this moment. In the middle of the battlefield, in front of the gate of the Jikao city, the army on both sides, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, were watching, covered in white armor. Balistan is fighting against his opponent. When Leonor arrived, the battle on the field had entered a white-hot stage. Balistan killed his opponent's horse and was also lifted off the war horse. Both sides raised their swords to chop each other, and the sound of the swords intercepted the battlefield. Balistan was old, but his martial arts were still fierce. He knocked away the opponent's helmet with his sword during the battle, making his opponent's red hair fly. John, give up! Balistan shouted. As the opponent of Balistan, he is also an old man, with red hair all over his head, but his physique is equally strong. Faced with Balistan's surrender, he raised his sword and yelled. This is impossible, Balistan, I'm different from a guy like you. Who is this? Leonor looked at the old man with grey hair and asked Barry next to him. Hearing the meaning of the conversation, he seemed to be an acquaintance with Mr. Ballystan. The great knight said his name is John Clinton. Barry held his helmet and answered Leonor's question with a somewhat restrained expression. John Clinton, the king's hand of heiress too. Leonor was a little surprised. This man had a reputation back then. He was the king's hand after Irving Mary Weiss. Later, because he was dismissed by heiress too because of his poor combat. Yes, it is said that he went into exile after being dismissed by heiress too and died there directly. Now it seems that this is just a rumor. Barry nodded. Vincent, can you find out the news about this person? Leonor turned around and asked his breast brother. No, your majesty. Vincent shook his head directly. His energy is mainly focused on the royal court's parliamentary ministers. Such a guy who is old and old does not have enough time to collect information at the moment. Forget it. Leonor also knew that Vincent was not a Doraemon and could not respond to it all, especially intelligence, which is very important to accumulate, so he turned to the guard next to him and said, "Take me aside." The royal flag was raised. A moment later, the yellow flag of the crowned stag rose from the army, causing an uproar on the entire battlefield. In the middle of the battlefield, the fighting Ballystan separated from John Clinton. When he turned around and saw the yellow flag rising, he sighed in his heart, turned his head to John Clinton and said, "John, surrender. Our king is here. That's just a usurper, the king I'm loyal to is Targaryen." John Clinton gasped. But what did the Targaryen kings do? They were obsessed with wildfires and dragons. Look. John, His Majesty Leono has brought hope to the people of Westeros. He is a good king, unlike Robert and from Eris's good king. Ballystan was heartbroken. Good king? Humph, in the hearts of all kings and nobles, the common people are just tools to speak. John Clinton breathed smoothly. The same is true for His Highness Riga. Ballystan asked. Shut up your stinky mouth, I don't allow you, the betrayer, to mention his name. John Clinton was instantly angry and attacked with his sword again. Isn't that true? Ballystan asked back with a move. No, no, His Highness Riga is not. John Clinton let out a louder voice, and the great sword in his hand slashed wildly. Click! With a crisp sound, the sword broke. Chapter 116. During the fierce battle, John Clinton's great sword slashed on Ballistan's sword and was directly cut off. You lost. Ballystan supported the attack, and after giving John a sentence, he punched the grey-haired old man with a backhand and threw himself down. Say, tell me who you and the Golden Group are allegiance. Ballystan pressed John's throat with his sword and forced him to tell the person behind the Golden Group. Kill me. John Clinton's lips were broken by Ballystan, and he spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, and let Ballystan hit him with a stern voice. Da-da, the sound of horse hooves is getting closer and closer. Ballystan looked up and saw dozens of knights galloping from the army opposite, but he was not panicked, because behind him, there was also a crown and dozens of the famous knights arrived. Teacher, thank you for your hard work. Leonor came to the horse with a mace. He looked at the dozens of military cavalry opposite him and waved his hand to let several guards come forward to control the struggling John for Ballystan. Ask Ballystan about the situation. Ballystan didn't say anything, but just waved his hand with breath. He was not young anymore and his physical strength was not as strong as before. Opposite to Ballystan, dozens of cavalrymen held the reins of the horse and did not launch an attack on Leonor. A 16 or 17-year-old boy stepped forward to negotiate. Don't hurt my teacher, we're willing to pay the ransom. Leonor looked at the boy on the opposite side carefully and saw his black armor and gold edges, a bright red cloak surrounded by his blue hair. Under his blue hair was a feminine face, and some purple light shone out from his black eyes. Leave your name. Brienne shouted loudly. You can call me Little Griffin, John Clinton is my teacher, he is the noble of Westeros, and according to the rules, we can redeem him. The blue-haired boy replied, citing that the nobles can redeem themselves and avoid death. The law of. Who are you and the Golden Group loyal to? What is his name and where is it from? Answer these questions, you can take your teacher away for free. Leonor did not reject the blue-haired boy's words, but the ransom he asked for was special. We are loyal to Aegon VI. He is the son of Riga and Ilia, the legal heir to the Iron Throne. The blue-haired boy responded with ease. These words caused John Clinton's struggle, but he heard that after finishing the boy's words, he slowly calmed down again, which was very strange. Aegon 6, isn't this Jon Snow's real name? Leono was a little confused. Could that guy escaped from the Night Watcher, but he didn't hear the news. Wait a minute, he is talking about Rhaega and Ilya's child Aegon 6. Jon Snow should be the child of Rhaega and Lyanna. He and Ilya's child were not killed by Demon Mountain. Is it right? Your Majesty. Seeing Leonor fell silent, Balistan couldn't help but urge him. Sorry, teacher, I'll deal with your captive. Leonor came to his senses and knew that it was not the right time to think about this, so he apologized to Balistan first, then waved to the guards, let him go. Bound by the guards, John Clinton suddenly gained freedom and quickly stepped forward to meet with little Gary, who was dismounted. Boy, take your teacher away, and then escape as far as possible, the farther the better. Leonor watched John reunited with the dismounted little griffin, and persuaded the two to leave. Thank you, your generous majesty. Little Griffin confirmed that his mentor was fine, turned his head and nodded to Leonor, and he still wanted to say something, but was interrupted. Next, I will not accept any of you surrender or redeem. You only have two ways. One is to surrender directly and unconditionally, waiting for my defeat. I may be able to spare your life, and maybe execute you. The other is to be we will execute it directly. Leono ignored the blue-haired boy's gratitude and his face was gloomy. Thank you for your generous advice. The blue-haired boy was not inspired by Leono's words, but still thanked him politely, and then took his teacher to retreat to the city of Jinang. Listen to all the people in the Golden Group, those who surrender will be exempted from the death penalty. If they do not surrender, they will be executed immediately. Leono took advantage of the dozens of blue-haired boys' riders turning around and leaving, and then declared his order to surrender to them. After dozens of cavalry left without saying a word, Leonor also turned around and took Balistan and others back to the camp, convened the generals of the camp, asked about the weapons and food, and arranged combat tasks and combat rewards. From now on, first attack into the city of Jian, bounty 1,000 dragons, and give 300 households to the fief. Those who cut off the golden flag will bounty 1,000 dragons, and give 300 households to the fief. Those who kill the golden group leader, Hali Streikron, bounty of 800 dragons and granted 200 households to beef. Aegon 6 was killed, bounty of 600 dragons and granted 200 households to bet. The various rewards were not only informed by Leono, but also publicly announced by the guards in the camp. After a moment of effort, the entire military camp began. When he became restless, every soldier began to sharpen his sword. This is true for the army, only rewards and punishments. When Leono conquered the Western Front, the oath he declared did not expire at all. Even the 1,000 soldiers who followed him into the Western Front did not grab any major heads, each person still received subsidies and rewards, many of which were there are more than a dozen golden dragons, as well as a few golden dragons. The other soldiers who stayed behind also get money according to their level. Just for this war, even if he did not bear the military expenses of other princes, he would still send hundreds of thousands of golden dragons in vain. However, the advantage of this is that he gathered the morale of the army. He showed everyone his credit, and the soldiers who received the money did not believe him, so when they heard him give him a formal pre-reward, the soldiers also began to scream. Originally, Leono decided to start the next day, but the howling soldiers could not wait. They prepared at night and lit a torch, but they were worried that they would not dare to fight. Officers at all levels came to Leono's tent to ask for their orders. Attack. Since that's the case, then fight directly. Leono saw that the morale of the army was available, and he had no objection. What he wanted now was a quick battle and a quick decision. As the orders came down layer by layer, countless fires lit up in the night. Soldiers wearing swords and armor carried long ladders and ropes on their shoulders, called each other to join in, crossed the moat directly, and then went to the vulture nest in the dark night. The city defenders launched an attack. The Golden Group in the Vulture Nest City is a mercenary. Although it has certain military disciplines, it is extremely dispersed. Especially in the past few days of watching Barlistan and John Clinton compete against each other, everyone was not concerned and secretly played. At this moment, Leono's army rushed across the moat, and they all had no time to react. The shouting army captured the city gate with just one wave of attack and climbed up the city wall. A squadron leader of the 32nd Royal Bride Regiment named Akeley won the first prize of entering the city. In the name of His Majesty Leono, Akeley, the captain of the 32nd Battalion of the Royal Bridal, received the merit of entering the city, bounty of 1,000 dragons, and granted 300 fiefs. The front line was riding the horse and the song title rewards stimulated more soldiers to start yelling. Every 200 people were in one echelon after another, attacking Jokeo city like a tide. Chapter 117. The soldiers' enthusiasm for making achievements is far greater than purple thunder, gunpowder and wildfire, helping Leono to open the Eagle Nest city without any effort. When the sun rises, the golden crown stag flag is already erected on the top of the city of Vulture Nest City, and countless soldiers are still attacking the city one after another. The bodies of the mercenaries of the Golden Group were spread layer after layer in the city. When the sun rose to the sky, only the main fort in the entire city was still in the hands of the Golden Group. When the sun was slightly slanted down, the signs of several gilded skulls fell, and the helpless cry of war elephants spread throughout the city, and the golden ball shouting "Gold is above, cold iron is below" had completely disappeared. Harry Stryl, the leader of the Golden Genocide, was captured by Storm 23rd Regiment and sent to Leonore along with the Golden Genocide's golden skeleton. Is this the previous leader of the Golden Group? Leonore looked at more than a dozen gilded skulls that were tied together like gourds, with an interesting expression. The Golden Group was formed by the illegitimate sons of the Targaryen family. In order to ensure the cohesion of the mercenary group, each of them had a tradition, which was to cut off their heads after death, boil them in a pot to remove the skin and finally plate them. The gold is hung up as a symbol of the mercenary group, and now it has accumulated as many as 12. Your Majesty. Balistan looked at the gilded skull with a disgusting expression. Let them all be buried in peace. Anyway, they are back to their hometown. Leonore saw Balistan's expression and waved his hand, asking the guards to take down the golden heads like gourds and bury them. Tell me. Where is Aegon 6? Leonore asked someone to deal with the golden ball sign and walked to a man kneeling in the hall. The man was wearing black blood-stained armor, with Hubai's beard, and was trembling all over. He looked up at the king of King Link hung with black hair and blue eyes and black armor, and took a breath. I asked for a redeem myself. I said that you have no right to atonement after yesterday, but I will give you a chance to answer my questions, and I will give you a chance to atone for your sins. Leonore spoke indifferently. Aegon 6 is Griffin, a little boy, who is Rhaega's child. Varys exchanged him for the farmer's child and asked John Clinton to raise him. Harry Strickland softened directly to the ground. Explain everything. So that's how it is. Leonore understood suddenly, and the blue-haired boy flashed in his head. No wonder he had that kind of demeanor. No wonder Varys escaped after the Golden Group landed. It was really good. Means. Tell me, how do you contact the princes of the Stormland? Which princes have surrendered to you? Leonore asked another question. Tyrion Lannister, in the name of Stannis, talked with the princes of the Stormland and achieved their surrender. Stannis and Aegon 6 joined forces. Leonore was puzzled. Tyrion actually defected to Stannis. Is it true? No, that little demon just borrowed Stannis' name. The princes of the Stormland did not know the existence of Aegon 6. They only thought they were serving Baratheon. Then do you know where Stannis is? Leonore was slightly surprised and asked with a tentative question. He was hiding in Pantos with his fleet and was trying to contact the Iron Vault, but the messengers of the Iron Vault were unwilling to pay attention to him. He only had a fleet, no gold. Where does Aegon 6 know now? Leonore was amused by his brother's experience and asked about the blue-haired boy for a while. Escape. He fled in a boat with John Clinton last night and fled back to Essos. We still have some soldiers there. Harry Strickland mentioned something, hoping for I'll get my life. The last question, how do you plan to redeem your life? Leonore became expressionless. I am willing to spend money. I have a sum of money in the Iron Gold warehouse, and I have 60,000 gold marks. If I change it to the Golden Dragon, I should have 20,000 yuan. I can withdraw it with the key. I am willing to spend 10,000 yuan to buy myself back. Harry Strickland's face was ashamed. After returning to Ersis, find someone to send the money, and then tell the public that you escaped by yourself. Leonore waved. Thank you, Your Majesty Leonore. Harry Strickland's face finally recovered a little bit of anger, and he kowtowed to Leonore repeatedly, and was pulled down by the guards during the thanks. Your Majesty, you shouldn't let him go like this. Balistan watched Harry Strickland be pulled away, with a look of contempt on his face. Why? Killing him is useless. Keeping him may also cause some trouble for Aegon VI. Leonor refused. I don't think as thoughtful as you, but I don't think a person like him deserves to live in the world. Balistan first admitted his mistake, but still expressed his contempt for that guy. Is there anything worth it or not? The more enemies he has, the better. Forget it. Leonor smiled and waved his hand. Balistan was still a bit old-fashioned. Okay. Seeing that Leonor could not convince him, Balistan had to give up. By the way, teacher, after you go back this time, you can start writing the rules of the knights. Leonor found something for Balistan. He was not going to let Balistan lead the troops again. He was too old-fashioned. Suitable for the new war situation. Yes, Your Majesty, please allow me to resign from the positions of Captain of the Imperial Guard and the Great Knight. I only want to retain the Imperial Guard's identity, because from ancient times to the present, no living Imperial Guard has voluntarily given up his identity. Balistan's face was gloomy. He knew that writing the rules of the knights was a name, but in fact he retired. You can keep the big knight too. Leonor tolerated Balistan's resignation. He could not find someone with prestige enough to lead the entire army and loyal enough to lead the army. Yes. Balistan breathed a sigh of relief, but was a little ashamed, because there were few royal guards who retired like him, and most of them died in battle on missions, just like Alex Ogert. My teacher, don't do this. I look forward to your knight rules to add glory to our kingdom and set another benchmark for the new knights. Leonor couldn't help but comfort him when he saw Balistan's sad look. Yes, My Majesty, please feel free to hand over this matter to me. Although I can't beat this old bone, I can still do a lot. Balistan said again. This is right, this is my teacher, the fearless Balistan. There are many people who are not afraid of swords, but there are few people who are not afraid of death and aging, and always maintain fighting spirit. You are undoubtedly such a person. Leon Nokin's sincere praise made Balistan's mouth unable to help but curl up, and his already rosy face turned even more red. Are you embarrassed? Leonor couldn't help but say a hint, then laughed. Chapter 118. Interrogate prisoners, count spoils, check combat achievements, and distribute rewards. It only took 1 day and 1 night to capture the city of G-Nest, but it took 3 days to finish after the war. After finishing the finale, Leonor had time to sit down and discuss with Oberon, Metz, Balistan, Vincent and Donald Noy who came later on the next battle. It is not enough to capture the Vulture Nest City. According to Harry Strickland's explanation, the Princes of the Storm were smuggled by the little demons with Stannis's banner. Leonor didn't know what Stannis would look like when he heard this, but the Princes in the Storm did not expect him to rebel. His goal was to establish a centralized kingdom, and he had always formulated policies according to this center to suppress them. It will be a matter of time before the princes of all over the world confront each other. However, I didn't expect that the Storm Princes who have been ruled by the Baratheon family for generations were the first to jump out. Let's talk about it. Leonor sat upright with his hands on his knees, allowing everyone to speak freely. Your Majesty, what's there to say? The Princes of the Stormland tried to rebel. The Buchler family of Tongmen City insulted you in public. According to the law, they should be cut off their heads one by one and inserted them directly into the long head of the Red Fort City. The spear was shown on the public. Metz shouted directly, what else is there to talk about? Mr. Mess. Leonor rolled his eyes in his heart, but his face was smiling and pressed slightly, asking Mess not to worry and not to be impatient first. Your Majesty, I agree with Lord Mess' words. Oberon stood up and agreed with Mess in rare circumstances. Master Balistan, Vincent and Donner, let me tell you your opinions. Leonor nodded to Oberon, then looked at the other attendees. Your Majesty, there is a reason for the Princes of the Stormland to do this. Balistan glanced at Messe and Oberon and spoke sincerely. Very good, teacher, please continue. Leonor nodded quickly. For the Princes of Stormland, you are the king. Although you also serve as the Duke of Fengzi Castle, in the eyes of the princes, you will pay more attention to the king's leadership and your foundation as a king, rather than the Duke of Storm Castle and the interests of the princes in the Stormland. Balistan spoke out. I did have some negligence. It can be said that the princes of the Stormland opposed me because they did not trust me, right? Leonor nodded and admitted. That's right. Balistan nodded repeatedly, which was exactly what he was going to say. You're saying it makes sense. Do you have any other opinions? Leonor looked at the others. I agree with Lord Balistan. Donner Noy nodded in agreement with Baliston's opinion, and Vincent, who was standing in front of him, nodded. Since everyone thinks this matter makes sense, then start from this point of view and find a solution. Leonor was not happy and angry, and asked everyone to solve the problem from this root problem. This. All of the people present looked at each other, and they didn't know what Leonor meant. Your Majesty, in my opinion, the princes lack a true leader. Since they hope, I will give them a Duke of Fengzi Castle. What do you think? Mess had a sudden idea and smiled and proposed to Leonor to the list with a smile. Our Majesty does not have a suitable relative to take on this important task. Oberon frowned slightly, not very satisfied with Mess' words. The Duke may not have one, but the Duke. His Highness Vivian and his newly born Arya can take on this important task. Mess directly made a suggestion to let Margaret's children Vivian and Arya come. Inheriting Fengzi Castle. The two high men are still too young. Oberon was not very satisfied. It is precisely because of the smallness that the princes of the Stormland can trust them. Mess quickly explained. What do you mean is to forgive the insults of the Storm Princes, including the Copper Gate City? Oberon raised his eyebrows slightly and asked a sharp question. This. Mess' expression suddenly stopped. He fought for benefits for his granddaughter and future grandson, but he couldn't help making a decision on this matter. According to Lord Mess, Vivian was appointed as the Duke of Windshi Castle. Considering that she is still young, she is not yet Fengshi Castle, and the governor of Windshi Castle is still the same as Donner. Leonor expressed his expressionless face. Issued my own will. Your Majesty, your greatness is unmatched. Seeing that his intention was achieved, Messe couldn't help but smile with satisfaction and complimented Leonor. Next, the princes of Fengzi Castle were sent to the princes, asking them to visit Fengzi Castle on time to meet their duchess, and to state their actions during the invasion of the Golden Group. Except for the Copper Gate City, the Buckles family the night insulted the king and colluded with the remnants of Lannister. His crimes were unforgivable. All the people in the family were executed. All the walls of the Tongmen city were demolished and all the territory was taken over by Fengzi Castle. Leono issued his own disposal. Do you have any objections? Leono asked everyone about his opinion. Your Majesty is kind. There is no better adjective for Leonor's way of disposing of it except kindness. There is no objection, so let's implement it accordingly. Leonor waved his hand directly, leaving only many ministers talking. Donner, who had changed into luxurious silk clothes, ignored the others, carefully approached Vincent, and asked the invisible prince. Your Majesty doesn't seem to be very satisfied. I don't know. Vincent shook his head directly, and he couldn't figure out what the king's brother was thinking. Is your Highness Vivian easy to get along with? Donner asked another question. Although he is now the governor, he will still give up his seat in the future and serve Vivian by, the heir to Fengzi Castle designated by Leonor, Rathian. Your Highness is only 1 year old and 2 months. Vincent rolled his eyes. Is it too early for this blacksmith to please the future Feng Jun now? Then I need to prepare some gifts. Donner ignored Vincent's thoughts and just planned to please the future Feng Jun. Not to mention the discussions of everyone here, Leono walked out of the camp, but he was slightly yelled in his heart. His meeting today was purely a test, and it seemed very obvious that everyone's mind was still in the feudal system. Everyone thinks that he will definitely share his territory with his children in the future, and no one wants to rely on the unification. This is good news, which means that the princes have not discovered his idea of unification, and he can continue to paralyze the princes and accumulate the power of unification. This is also bad news, because no one is close to his mind, and his future path to unifying Westeros will be full of difficulties, and relatives may turn against each other. Since that's the case, then come on. There are still White Horse Alliance and 7 Kingdoms Rebellion in the Western Han Dynasty. I want to see who can laugh to the end. Leonor looked up at the sky. Chapter 119. The battle to capture Jikao City was extremely smooth. Leono recognized a reality from this battle. His army was mature. He now has more than 20,000 strong and fearless soldiers, but he still lacked the ability to command these. The general of the soldier, especially a general who can command the entire army. This is probably the so-called truth that 1,000 troops are easy to obtain, but one general is hard to find. Out of demand for generals, Leono held another military meeting to allow all regiment-level officers to attend. More than 30 senior officers including Barry Dondiryan and Sando Gerald were crowded in a clearing, waiting for Liano's meeting content. Listen to all of you. Next, the battle against Tongmen City will be handed over to one of you to command. Lord Balistan and I will go to Fengzi Castle to wait for your good news. Leonor first. A piece of news was announced to everyone that he would not participate in the battle against Tongmen City, and the battle would be handed over to the command of an officer at the scene. Wow! When all the officers heard His Majesty's announcement, they immediately became uproar. Those who were interested in and had guessed the meaning. Whoever could command this battle and perform well would definitely be appreciated by His Majesty the King and thus change their destiny. Your Majesty, who will be given to the command of this battle? Someone who couldn't wait to ask. Good question, this is also my goal to call you over. Now, let me first state my expectations for this battle to you. Leonor sat tiltedly on his body, holding his knees with one hand, with some ruffianity in his eyes. Looking at the officers who were looking forward to it, I want the lives of all the Breck family members. I will remove the walls of the Tongmen City. To the civilians of the Tongmen City, try not to harm them, but if I die loyal to Breck there is no need to pity them for the K family. I said my request. Now, tell me, how can you fulfill this request? Leonor spread his hands to all the officers, like an examiner who posted the test questions. Your Majesty, please allow me to speak. An officer wearing black armor and with thick beard stood up. Report your title. Leonor looked at the officer in black armor and asked him to report his name first. Dear Your Majesty, I am Jedo from the 32nd Royal Inn Regiment, I am a civilian. If you hand over this task to me, I will complete it with courage and force, just like the first one of our regiments rushed in. Like the Eagle Nest City. Jedo, with a strong beard, knelt on one knee. Is there any more? Leonor asked. Jedo's expression was slightly dumbfounded. He could not imagine what war needs besides courage and force. Okay, your answer is pretty good, but it's not enough, sit back. Leonor reached out and pressed. The leader of the 32nd Regiment, Jedo, had a disappointed expression and could only get up and sit back to his seat. Next. Leonor spoke and looked at everyone. Your Majesty, I am Grossi Bayar of the Storm 71st Regiment, and the second son of the Bayar family who lived in the horns of the King's Sow for generations. A white-faced officer wearing silver armor stood up. First of all, Bin Binyali introduced himself, and then continued to speak after getting permission. If Your Majesty is willing to hand over the command to me, I hope to get the dominance of the 5 regiments of the Stormland and a cavalry regiment. I will use the etiquette of the nobles. Come and carry out this battle. I will send letters to the Copper Gate City, declare real war on the Breck family, and let their troops go out of the city to have a dignified showdown with me until one side dies. It was indeed a normal aristocratic warfare. Leonor nodded in his heart. Although he was fighting a warfare, he was much better than Jedo, a civilian. At least he mentioned that he needed cavalry and specific forces, and he knew that he wanted to turn Buell. The K family fished out of the city so that they could play their advantages in military strength in field battles. Next. Leonor did not appreciate Grossi, because he was not surprised by the education he had received to say these things. He reached out and pressed Grossi and let the next officer speak. Next, the officers stood up and spoke. They mentioned many methods, including how many troops and branches they need. Some of them need military rations, some of them need siege equipment, and some of them proposed psychological warfare. I promised to forgive the Western Knights, and to instigate the people, soldiers, and knights of the Tongmen City. At the beginning, many officers who spoke first were still a little disappointed and felt that they had lost the election. However, as the meeting progressed, one colleague after another stood up to speak, and they couldn't help but fall into deep thoughts and began to think about what else they could think about. Completion is made. After most officers made speeches, the preparatory guard, who acted as the messenger of Balistan, stood up and asked Leono. Your Majesty, please allow me to speak. Tell me. Leonor stretched out a hand and made a casual position. Please give me the command of this battle. Bor spoke firmly. How do you meet my request? I want 40,000 golden dragons, and there are 3,000 fiefs of the reward advances, and 3 regiments of infantry, 1 regiment of cavalry, and the food and grass to support these troops marching. Bor stroked his right hand and said first. Deliver your own needs. When you agree to give me these troops and needs, I will send my 3 regiments of infantry to set out first, and challenge the Brink family in the city of Tongmen, and publicize your execution to them, and the cavalry will hide the custody. What will happen then? Leonor nodded slightly. The Breck family would be desperate at that time. After despair, they would do everything they could to resist. When they found out that we were short of cavalry, they would send cavalry without hesitation and try to disperse us with cavalry. They would definitely do that, because they are nobles, knights. Pole pointed out the honor that nobles value. As long as they attack, my infantry will entangle them, and then let the cavalry beat them and chase them into the city of Tongmen. They also have the possibility of not attacking, and the battle will be in a stalemate, but I will do my best to provoke them. If I cannot, I will release news to the city, forgive some of the knights and soldiers of the Tongmen city, and even persuade the people to tell them that they can be distributed to the land and to instigate them to open the city gate. Opening the gate of the Tongmen city is an important node. Once the gate is opened, our army will be able to drive straight in. At that time, I will use the rewards you prepaid to inspire the soldiers to fight, so that they can use swords to let the traitors know that they are betrayed. Cost. What do you think? Leonor looked at Mess, Oberon, Balistan, and others attending the meeting. Your Majesty, you'll decide. Mess tried his best to keep himself from sleeping and muttered directly. Bolivia. Oberon voted. Ball is young, but his plan is very detailed, and I think he can give it a try. Balistan looked at the young white-armored knight, his words were reserved, but he did not hide his recognition. Chapter 120. When Leono saw that the three ministers in front of the emperor abstained from power, he agreed and immediately cheered up and stood up and shouted. Ball. Your Majesty. Bor, wearing white armor, quickly knelt down on one knee. From now on, you are the royal guard and also serve as the commander of the Tongmen city battle. Leono first transferred Bor's position to regularize. White Knight Bor didn't say anything, and buried his head directly on the ground, his shoulders kept shaking. Jedder, the Storm 32 Regiment. Leonor ignored Bor and shouted again. Your Majesty. Bor, with a strong beard, quickly got up and stepped out of the line and fell to his knees. The 71st Royal Guard, Grossi Beer. The 39th Royal Brigade, Bald Palund. The 13th Iron Guard Regiment, Rieked Geld. Every time Leonor pronounces a number and a name, one of the officers below will fall out of the line and kneel down. When the 3 infantry regiments and the chief officers of a cavalry regiment are in place, he directly announced. After the discussion just now and the discussion of the imperial meeting, I decided to organize you into a temporary legion, commanded by my royal guard Bor, and follow his order to conquer the Tongmen city. Yes, my Majesty. The 4 officers did not dare to hesitate. Ball, the team you want is here. According to your vision, I will satisfy everything you ask for. Tell me, can you destroy the Breck family? Leonor once again looked at Bol, who had been burying his face on the ground. Ask. Your Majesty, you are my god, and I will destroy the Breck family. Bor raised his tears and knocked his head down again. What would you do if they don't obey your orders? Leonor pointed his hand at the 4 officers including Jeddo, Grossi, Bald, and Ricard. Kill. Bor raised his head and gave a reply without hesitation, causing the 4 people kneeling beside him to feel sad. What would you do if the soldiers were afraid of war and play, and did not take the battle seriously, disrupting the team's will to fight? Leonor asked again. Kill. Bor's reply was decisive. Okay, I'm waiting for you to bring Breck's head to me. Leonor waved directly. Thank you, Your Majesty. Bor kowtowed hard again, then stood up, turned to face the 4 officers, bowed slightly to them before walking aside. Listen to others, including you 4, too. You are not commanders now, but it does not mean that you are not commanders in the future. I have sent crows to the princes of the Stormland and asked them to go to Fengzi Castle to state their actions, but all those that are not expired are classified as traitors. Do you understand? Leono pointed to the commanders except Bor and said a sentence to them, asking them all to lift their heads and show their joy. Look. Long live my king. Barry Dondirion spoke first. Long live my king. The officers began to shout, and the voices came from afar, making the soldiers nearby look at each other. After shouting a while of slogans, the military meeting ended, and the regiments began to act on their own, either resting on the spot or preparing to march. Leono handed over the battle against Tongmen city to the new Imperial Guard Bor, and then left 2 regiments in the Jimmy Kun city to be ready to respond at any time. He took the remaining 7 regiments to Fengzi Castle. They will be there waiting for the visits of the princes of the Stormland and the result of the conquest of the Tongmen city. Under the dome castle of Fengzi Castle, Liano rode on the street with a newly tamed war elephant, looking down at the people on both sides of the street, feeling a little sigh. The last time he accompanied Lan Li back to deal with Stannis, he was eager to return to King's Landing City to handle political affairs, so he did not enter Fengzi Castle at all. It has been almost 20 years since he was summoned to Red Castle. Fengzi Castle, which I hadn't seen in 20 years, still maintained its appearance as a child. Leonor returned to the large living room of Fengzi Castle. Looking at the wooden table sitting with Master Clasen back then, he couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion in his heart. Stannis once protected him and Renly here, and also tried to kill him and Renly here. Master Creason was also dead, and it is said that he was poisoned to death by Melisandre. Leonor walked around the wind bowl and finally came to the squatter where he had been away from the war. He saw that it was now pitch black and empty. Everyone go out. Let me be quiet alone. Leono stepped back and sat alone in the corner of the ground, slowly closing his eyes to rest, recalling the past. When he recalled the past, his body naturally fell asleep. Leono's soul naturally woke up and floated out of his body. He stood still. He could urge his soul to parade at will, but he didn't want to move, he just waited quietly. Standing there, it blends with the darkness of the underground and the entire Fengzi fort. Every brick body, every piece of soil, when the thoughts are completely integrated into matter, Leono wakes up from his contemplation, and a castle appears inside his soul. This castle stands above the waves, facing the bombardment of thunder and storms, tightly, strong and never compromise are the whole picture of Fengzi Castle. Well, is this the magic in the Wind-Swift Castle? Leonor felt the Wind-Swift Castle in his soul and could suddenly realize that this was probably the spell set by the city builder Brandon and the Son of the Forest. Magic and Taoism are interconnected. The spells of the builder Brandon and the Son of the Forest are similar to the maze of the Red Fort. They are essentially spells formed by the interweaving of spiritual thoughts of creatures, but the spells of the Red Fort can only have psychedelic effects. It is impossible to find an authentic entrance, and the curse of Wind Breath Castle is much higher, which gives the castle the power to fight against the storm. When Leono was a child, he could only vaguely feel the thoughts in the walls of Fengzi Castle. Now that he has practiced and traveled to the old place, he feels the curse of the entire castle. After slightly feeling the way the spell runs, his soul floats in the air and changes slightly, and in a flash, it turns from a transparent human form into a solid dome castle, solid and tight, standing in the strong wind, rain, and thunder. It can be used as a visual object, it's really good. Leonor restored his soul to its original state, and his face was very satisfied. He had already understood the spell in the castle. The foundation of Taoist art in the Yangshen world is the object of visualization. What Leono has always visualized is the view of the star gods in the Taoist scriptures. This kind of visualization is very low level, just visualizing the sun, moon, and stars in nature, leaving the clear light of the sun, moon, and stars in the soul, and is used to enhance its own temperament, without any aggressiveness at all, so don't say it's to the visualizations that carry the supreme secrets of time, space, past, darkness, light, etc., such as Shangdao, Dachan Temple, and Xiantian Pavilion, are not even as good as some visualizations that can transform the inner demonic thoughts into Dingjia divine generals. This time he understood the spell in Fengzi Castle and successfully visualized it in his heart. He got the true intention of Fengzi Castle to stand firm against the storm. Next, as long as he practiced the spell, you can cast some spells that can interfere with matter, such as activate an invisible water flow or soil to create a protective barrier, and have the ability to initially defend against dragon flames. Since the wind and vast castle can be transformed into a visual object, the Great Wall of Desperate. Leono was very happy to successfully visualize the wind and vast castle. The magical creation of the Son of the Forest is still powerful, but in this way, he can only defend himself against the dragon in advance. Yan, if you want to really fight against Long Yan, you have to find other magic. If Fengzi Castle can do it, is it okay to Desperate Great Wall?